Good morning, Honorable Chief Guest, Consulate General of the Federal Republic of Germany. Guten Morgen, sir. Secretary General, Major General V. N. Chaturvedi, Chairperson of the Day, Dr. Kunal Sarkar, esteemed judges, members of the alumni, and members of the Managing Committee. A very warm welcome to the 23rd N Birla Memorial Invitational Debate. May I now request Major General V. N. Chaturvedi, Secretary General Vidya Mandir Society, to kindly deliver the welcome address.
No. Very good morning to all the students and the Honorable Consul General of the Republic of Germany and esteemed judges and the moderator for the day, Dr. Sarkar. Indeed, it is a pleasure every year to host this signature event of Birla High School. It has seen various ups and downs ever since its inception. It had an all-India nature initially. Then it became almost a Calcutta-based local debate. And then we again made efforts to give it an all-India invitational nature. Till this time we were able to stabilize, and before we could, we had the pandemic rushing at us. But the organizers have not given up even during the pandemic. We conducted 2 years the N Birla Memorial Debate online, which was a very, very successful event in both the years. In fact, in one of them, we had Dr. Kunal Sarkar sitting in his so-called authorized uniform of green with his cap and his mask, because there were chances of him being called for an emergency at any time. We indeed remain thankful to him for his indulgence to the Birla Memorial Debate. A word on the debate itself. Today, ladies and gentlemen, is also the Founders' Day of Birla High School. That is the date of birth of the founder of the school, Sri Lakshmi Nivas Birla. And before this debate was instituted, a lot of activities used to take place as usual, as happens in all Founders' Day events. But ever since the inception of this debate, this is the celebratory event for our Founders' Day. We've had a very, very interesting session yesterday, because we had the prelims yesterday, and a very interesting debate on whether the celebration of the Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav is slightly before its time. And we had some very enlightened views, some very logically analyzed views, and a lot of statistics-based views. All of you were not present there. I can assure you, we've had some wonderful speakers yesterday. And my best wishes remain with those who are not able to qualify for today's final events. And if they are here, I would like to mention, even if they are not here, I would like to mention that their enthusiasm and their participation and their level of debating was fantastic. It's only that the level of debate in Calcutta is by far the best I have seen in the country, and I can assure you I have seen a lot of the country. I think 16 out of the 24 states I have visited, served in. So I have seen a lot of debating happening, but Calcutta by far has been the best, especially those schools who've come from outside. They should not go disappointed, but should go motivated to perform even better. I take this opportunity to welcome on stage all the participants who literally won their place here on the stage today. And today's motion, quite interesting, again relates to those 75 years. We would, I think, have a lot of exposure to the national education policy as I see it. But I would still want the logic and the analysis to continue. We would be having a very, very good debate, I'm quite sure. And today, before I end, I must give my best wishes and all the very best to all the participants and hope may the best team win. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. May I now introduce our chief guest for the morning, Consul General of the Federal Republic of Germany, Honorable Consul General Manfred Auster. Mr. Manfred Auster has extended his sincere service as the German ambassador to Haiti between 2016 to 2020, as the deputy head of Mission Ottawa, Canada from 2012 to 2016, a representative in the Department of Foreign Affairs and International Trade of Canada in 2009 and 2010. Also, a significant member of the German representation to NATO, Brussels, between 2002 to 2005. His expertise and guidance were also sought by German embassies in Hungary, Budapest, Berlin, Canberra, Vienna, and Ukraine. He is a highly decorated and accomplished Consul General who holds the passion to build strong and lasting relations with the countries he has worked in. The General brings with him an enormous experience of serving in the most challenging areas in a distinguished career spanning for over a decade. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Consul General Manfred Auster. I now request Consul General Manfred Auster, Secretary General Major General V.N. Chaturvedi, Director, Birla High Schools, Ms. Nain, Principal, Birla High School, Ms. Loveleen Sehgal, and Headmistress, Birla High School, Ms. Farida Singh, to kindly come up on stage to light the lamp. Thank you. May I now request our Honorable Chief Guest, Consul General Auster, to address the gathering.
Well, Madam Principal, Mr. Secretary General, alumni, students, faculty, finalists. Guten Morgen für Sie alle. Birla High School has also a program in German. That's why at least that little greeting should be in my mother tongue. I feel very privileged to be here as an invitee to address you as a chief guest. Even more so because the art of debating, which is not exactly the same as speaking, but they are closely linked, the art of debating is not something that we teach in Germany very much. So you are privileged in having debating clubs, debating societies, and unfortunately, the fact that we don't have it in Germany means that you are now blessed with someone who's probably not an excellent speaker. Nevertheless, let me just briefly, and that is another thing where you have to be careful when someone speaking says, I'll be brief, then probably he draws on for hours and hours. So hold me against my word on that one. Just one reflection, I think, about debating and why I regret that we don't have it in our German educational system. I think it is an art form that forces you to reflect upon the other's arguments very deeply, because that's what you are probably trying to contradict, to counter. You will do that not necessarily because you're convinced of that, but you're doing it, as I said, as a kind of an art form. And in a time where we see so many fake news around the globe, the need to look into the arguments of the other side is something very valuable and very precious. And I think it is something that we all should do much more often. I can see that on one of the big challenges of our days, and month, if you like, and that is what we see as being the war of aggression of Russia against Ukraine. Well, there are other narratives out there as well, and look into the arguments, see who started that war, and see also what consequences came from that, and then draw the conclusion for yourself who is responsible for that. My opinion is pretty clear, which comes out in the terminology that I have chosen right now. Nevertheless, the arguments are up there, they are out there, and you can draw from those. In a nutshell, I think it's a good thing to debate, to exchange, and to listen to the other side. And afterwards, in the good German spirit, even though you disagreed quite fundamentally, go and have a beer. Prost.
Thank you, sir. Debate is an art form which aspires to nurture and promote the ability to examine every side of important and controversial issues in an atmosphere of reasoned argument and respectful discourse. Each year, the N Birla debate showcases the enormous effort that students from across the city and country put forth to succeed in this intellectually exciting activity. A huge number of hours to research, discussion, case writing, practicing on countless evenings and weekends, at tournaments competing for their schools and teammates, form the foundation of a competition debate. Debate drives students to analyze serious subject matter in a mature and professional environment. A debater shows more maturity in the face of adversity and tends to develop stronger relationships with their peers and mentors than the average student. Over the last 22 years, the N Birla Memorial Invitational Debate has been providing the much-awaited and cherished platform for the didactic display and power-packed presentation of an assortment of opinions and points of views with a pedagogical goal in an environment that allows the brightest minds from schools across the country to take intellectual risks.
The prestigious N Birla Memorial Debate strives to empower global citizens with discerning, strong, and innovative minds prepared to challenge adversities, debate their disagreements honestly, yet in the making always pursue solidarity. Out of a myriad blend of scholastic and co-scholastic opportunities the school offers to cater to different learners, This debate has been a significant one, as it aims to fulfill our founder, late Sri N Birla's vision of creating free-thinking and independent individuals who combine service with excellence. To translate his vision into reality, each year the Birla High School fraternity has successfully hosted this debate that would open its windows to thoughts and ideas from across the globe.
And now, to give you a clear picture of how the awarding system works in this debate. We had a preliminary round of debating day before yesterday with 17 schools participating and competing for final day. The school teams comprise students from the senior secondary level, including Birla High School. Each institution was represented by 2 speakers, one for the motion and one against. 8 qualifying teams have moved on to the finals this morning. Attractive prizes await all the participants, the winning team, the best speaker, as well as the runner-up speaker. The N Birla Memorial Debate believes in empowering the youth. Hence, instead of a judges' question round, we have a Q panel comprising one representative from each of the schools shortlisted for the finals. They will be posing questions to the speakers of other schools.
It is now my proud privilege to introduce to you our esteemed panel of judges for the morning's debate. Our first judge is Mr. Ratan Postwala. Mr. Ratan Postwala is a partner and co-founder at People Trust, a consultancy focused on building capability and maximizing potential. He specializes in executive and leadership coaching and human resources advisory services for multinational and public sector corporations, startups, and universities. Prior to co-founding People Trust, Mr. Postwala had held a leadership position in the US and UK with the finance transformation team at Excel Service, an analytics company headquartered in New York. He's an avid sportsman who also enjoys theater, travel, music, and writing. Mr. Postwala is an alumnus of the Indian School of Business, Hyderabad. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Mr. Ratan Postwala. Yukt Khemka, the school president, would now be handing over a bouquet of appreciation to our honorable judge, Mr. Postwala.
Thank you, sir. Our next judge is Dr. Andrila Dutt. Dr. Andrila Dutt is an arts and events curator and presenter, a director who has directed Son et Lumiere at leading heritage sites such as Victoria Memorial, worked with artists such as Pandit Hari Prasad Chaurasia, Amitabh Bachchan, Usha Uttup, Malika Sarabhai, Shubha Mudgal, Lilith Dubey, to name a few. She is a moderator and a freelance writer, having written a book on the Kolkata police, columns for leading dailies such as Telegraph and Times of India. She is also associated with a number of NGOs and was the first delegate to the Cannes Art Film Festival from Kolkata. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Dr. Andrila Dutt. Arjun Jalan, head boy, Birla High School, would now be handing over a bouquet of appreciation to our Honorable Judge, Ms. Dutt.
Thank you, ma'am. Next, we have Ms. Ramanjeet Kaur. Ms. Kaur is an award-winning theatre and film actor, director. She is the founder-director of the Creative Arts and the National Vice President of the Arts Leadership Council, Women's Indian Chamber of Commerce and Industry. In 2002, she founded the Creative Arts, the prestigious theatre training institute. And in 2011, she created the All-Women Theatre Group. Ms. Kaur has been the proud recipient of many national awards, like the Sangeet Natak Academy's Ustad Bismillah Khan Yuva Puraskar, the Sanskriti Award, the Uttam Kumar Award, the Ladli National Award for Gender Sensitization, and international awards, namely the French Embassy Scholarship, France, and the Charles Wallace Award, United Kingdom. Miss Kaur's prowess as an actor in Deepa Mehta's films like Anatomy of Violence, Heaven on Earth, and Fire, Samir Mihanovich's Mouth of Hell, and Shalini Raghavaia's Watch the Stars for Me Tonight has earned her repute and recognition. Her directorial work Silence has won the prestigious Berlin Flash Film Festival Award. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Ms. Ramanjeet Kaur. Yukt Khemka, the school president, shall now present a bouquet of appreciation to Ms. Kaur.
Thank you, ma'am. Our last judge for the day is Mr. Pradeep Guptu. Mr. Pradeep Guptu is one of the best-known writers on business and economics. He runs his own research, survey, and writing company from Kolkata. He is in addition the founder secretary of the liberal think tank Bengal Initiative and founder trustee of the Calcutta Debating Circle. He has authored several books and has over 500 articles and editorials in the Economic Times, Business Standard, and Kolkata on Wheels to his name. The latest is a Government in India publication, now on Flipkart, Atithi Devo Bhava. He steered the Bengal Chamber of Commerce and Industry through the first 5 years of economic liberalization in the Rao Singh years. Mr. Guptu studied at Presidency College and Calcutta University, securing his MPhil in 1988-89. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Pradeep Guptu. Arjun Jalan, the head boy of Birla High School, would now be handing over a bouquet of appreciation to Honorable Judge Mr. Guptu. Our timekeepers for the day are Rafi Aziz and Rajveer Singh. May we have a huge round of applause for them.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, may we have a huge round of applause for the chairperson for this morning's debate, Dr. Kunal Sarkar. Yukt Khemka, the school president, shall now present a bouquet of appreciation to Dr. Sarkar. Thank you, sir. A national scholar and recipient of 11 medals in surgery, including the gold medal. One of the leading cardiac surgeons of India and past president of the Indian Association of Cardiothoracic Surgeons, a leading exponent of coronary bypass surgery and complex adult cardiac operations, senior vice chairman of Medica Hospitals, Kolkata, and chairman, Kolkata Heart Foundation, Dr. Kunal Sarkar has made an indelible impression in the field of debating. He's been an avid debater since school and college days at St. Xavier's Collegiate School and Medical College, Calcutta. He's the founder of the Calcutta Debating Circle, which hosts Calcutta's Festival of the Spoken Word, the largest debating festival in India, and aims to encourage quality public speaking among students. Sir, we request you to kindly grace the stage with your presence. Ladies and gentlemen, we are pleased to announce that this year too, the choice and decision regarding the topic has been the exclusive prerogative of our chairperson, Dr. Sarkar. May we have another round of applause for Dr. Sarkar for the topic. And now to commence the debate, it is over to our chairperson, Dr. Kunal Sarkar.
Thank you ever so much. I've been fairly regular at the N Birla debates, and I think during the pandemic, probably I received one of the e-admit cards for one of the board exams. That I've been so regular over the last few years. Never mind that. Well, if I look a little bit confused and phased this morning, because that is what I'm actually is. For whole of last 2 days, we were in a very niche domain meeting of Society of Coronary Surgeons of India and getting on with things very nicely in a rain-soaked Hyderabad. When all of a sudden, I tell you this story because I think this illustrates what education has meant to this country. We receive a warning, the phone flashes, that a patient from far off Farakka, a very poor person, a 33-year-old daily wage laborer waiting for a heart transplant, has just had an organ match, and the organ should be harvested within the next 6 to 7 hours from SSKM Hospital, Calcutta. Yesterday was Eid, right? And in that part of the world, in Murshidabad and Farakka, you know what Eid is like. We tried heaven and hell for him to get a public transport. He's got to travel through the night, a 7-hour journey to come to Kolkata and just be put on the table for a heart transplant. The family rang and said, no chance. We are not getting a single vehicle at all, nothing around. I receive a call from the sub-inspector of the Farakka police station. He calls us and says, Doctor, I've seen you on television. I have a vague idea what a heart transplant is, and this much I know, the time is very short. So the police station at Farakka fixes up a police ambulance, sends the man across a 7-hour trek from North Bengal to Kolkata. He arrives at 5 o'clock in the morning. We start the transplant at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and by 6 o'clock it's all finished and he's doing well. Friends, young ones across generation, that is perhaps a little snapshot of what education has meant to this country, where independence has been very hard to achieve. It has been a drama which was not enacted the way it was scripted. We did not end up where we want to, but it is through your eyes this morning that we will get an insight, which is not just a very merciless post-mortem of what's happened in the past, but a vision into the future. I assure our friend from Germany that the Berlin University Debating Society is one of the most vibrant. I've heard many of the debates. We've had students from Harvard, Princeton, Oxford, Cambridge, Karachi, Dhaka, Sydney. We just haven't had them from Germany, and I think in 2022 we will. We're going to have them. You have some brilliant young college debaters in the Berlin Debating Society. And this morning you will see what these youngsters are capable of. Now, by the way of rules of debating, I wanted an extra fixture, which sadly the organizers had not granted me. I wanted a kind of a barrier between the two sides, for and against. And when I mentioned this to some of the organizers, the ladies, because I'm generally only impolite to the males. I'm very polite with ladies by and large. That's what my wife says. And I said, we want a barrier between for and against. She said, is that because of the virus? I said, not really. That's because of the Shindeism. Right? Because if you just go by as to what's happening in Indian politics, in Indian polity today, I'm trying to memorize your faces as much as I can, because I won't really be surprised if suddenly halfway through the debate, if they feel it's not going very well for them, you might feel a slight disparity in the and population imbalance. So please refrain. Please refrain from the tendencies. There's one such incident happening now in India. I think it's Goa this time. So in this debate, first thing, you're not allowed to change your flows. You're not allowed to claim one another's icon, logos, whatever you want to. Stick to your positions. You've had the debating rules clearly outlined to you, so I think you speak for 3 minutes. At the end of a minute, when you have a minute to go, you receive a warning. And at the end of once you have spoken, I think one of your friends who sat in the audience, and they've all been sat at a fair distance. I calculated it because they won't be able to throw eggs at you, you know. Because when you get into debating with repartees, that is how you seat the people who will question you. It is called the non-eggable distance, you know. So they're all sat at a fairly safe, non-eggable distance from yourself, and please feel free to answer and respond to the questions. The judges have already been identified, so you know who to blame at the end of the debate. And a very tactical piece of mastery was done. They've all been given their gifts at the beginning of the program, you know. Because should the organizers change their minds and want to take the gifts away, you know, generally it's not done. Okay. So they've all been identified. So you can ask for their Twitter handles and email IDs and Facebook pages, because you must be very accurate and know who to troll, right? So I don't want any of the nastiness coming back to an already overworked, underpaid cardiac surgeon. So we've had enough. So we've had enough miseries in our lives, right? And by the way, at the end of the program, if any one of you wanted 50 reasons why not to become a doctor, pay me by Paytm, I'll send you the list. Okay. So it's always kept ready in my phone, you know. 50 reasons why not to become a doctor. The only trouble is I got the list too late, you know. So you can't change over. So on that note, ladies and gentlemen, the people who matter, the people who determine 65% of Indian demography, the young ones who will be leading this country, who over the last 7.5 decades have held on to a very hard-earned freedom, will debate on the motion this morning that for the last 75 years, the education system has served the nation well. There was only a little controversy at the beginning of the debate. I was wondering, what are we actually debating? Is it the education system or the air conditioning system? But I think the air conditioning system is probably coming into its own. Now let's see what the education system has in store for us. And on that note, as far as the list goes, can we have the speakers from Birla Balika Vidyapith for the motion, Srishti Lodha. Please get the proceedings rolling. Srishti Lodha for the motion of Birla Balika Vidyapith.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Well, I think you all would agree that change is not merely necessary for life, it is life itself. And when it comes about education, education provides us life. It provides us a nourishment to our very important soul. And when it comes to education, change is a necessary because it is an update which is needed to make us up to date. So when this comes to India, which was a country left depleted economically, culturally 75 years ago, we were left with no other choice but to adopt the least we could, that is the British education system, knowing fully well that it is not the best. Now, it is not that India gave up after adopting the system. It did bring in reforms, and the most important of them was the national education policy, which gets evolved time and time again. Even the right to education gets evolved. So, in one such right to education, that is 2009, it is very well stated that 25% of the private seats in the private schools need to be reserved for the lower strata of the society. Now, is this not what our education system is doing? Is it not serving the world? Because when it does so, when it reserves seat in best of the private schools, it is giving a chance to the lower strata of the society to mingle with the elite section and be a part of it. And that is what education is all about, giving everyone an equal say. Another thing is that Indian education is all about inclusive learning. Well, when our country did realize that we are lacking in adult literacy rate, it introduced adult literacy program. Is it not serving the nation? When our country realized that distant education is important, like people are not being able to handle their jobs, their households, along with getting educated, they started distant education, and IGNOU being one of the most important universities for it. And it offers so many diplomas which are accepted worldwide. When our country realized that we are not being able to take education to its roots, though so many policies are being implemented, they started the Anganwadi program. And when it realized that the program is still not getting that much success which it deserved, it started the midday meals, knowing fully well that the parents, the poor parents, no matter if they send their students for education or not, they would send them to have their tummy full. Similarly, when our society realized that education for disabled is important, it introduced programs for the same. Our education system has shifted time and time again. Now, I'm sure my worthy opponents would come up with points like, why are people still emphasizing on foreign universities like Oxford and Harvard? Now, the point is our IIMs and IIT students are the most sought after students in the world. Are they not? They get everything once they step into America and countries like that. So, our education system is the best, and this is just because those minds are nurtured in the Indian education system, which not only serves the country, but the world as a whole.
Srishti, thank you so much. And let's move over to the Q panelists. Srishti, you're not done yet. Right. For the notice of the judges, both the speakers, who will be the opening speakers, will get an extra minute after all the speakers have spoken to put in their rebuttals, because otherwise we are being a bit unfair to them. And please do mark them for the extra minute they will be speaking up. So mark them for whatever they've said now and give them some credit for the minute they will come back later. And the inquisitor, as far as Srishti is concerned, is Ananya Agarwal from Mahadevi Birla World Academy. Ananya.
Okay. So, ma'am, you said, and I quote, the education system of India allowed the lower strata of the society to mingle with the elite section. But considering the fact that the implementation of any policy or any aspect decides the policy as a whole, or the quality of the policy as a whole, and considering the fact that in India, a major privileged section of the society goes to private schools and the underprivileged section of the society opts for government schools, how do you justify your statement?
No, wait a minute, just keep it brief. Are you hinting on the meritocracy, or what exactly is your question? Because she's getting marked on that. So just one line. What is your central query? Come on.
Right. So, ma'am, you said that the lower strata of the society, the education system allows the lower strata of the society to mingle with the elite. But do you think that it really happens?
So you don't think it's a good idea?
I'm asking if it...
Right. So please respond quickly.
So the thing is, our education system is doing the best it can. And the problem is not with the system, it is the people who are lying inside it. The policies need to be adopted by the school, and the schools need to give chance, but it's often the school who refuses it at the same time. The problem is the people in the system. It's with the people in the system. It's not the policy makers.
Thank you, Srishti. Thank you. You did bring up the British education system. Thank you. Please don't stop taking notes because you're going to get 1 minute at the end of it, right? You did bring up the British education system. So let us see whether our dear friend Thomas Bevington Macaulay gets a mention sometime on with the debate. We'll reserve our comments for that stage. You know, when we discuss India's 75-year-old education system, remember that the Chinese education system is going on for 2,000 years. They haven't really changed much. Anyway, so we shall see. I think it'll be very unfair to get into snippets which takes the thunder away from the speakers. And we are all ears to listen to Tamanna Sahai from Birla Balika Vidyapith. Tamanna, the floor is yours.
Unlike my opponent, I luckily have a significantly shorter distance to walk, so I can start quicker. There's a certain phrase that's used in a lot of places, especially in the classroom if a teacher feels particularly angry. It's the phrase, "Padha likha gawar." It's something you hear a lot, especially when somebody is acting very stupid, which is, again, something I do a lot. When this is the kind of thing that we are being created into after going to our Indian education system. Like, you can argue that, sure, the Indian education system could be trying to prepare us for a life of work, of a life of dealing with paperwork, but it really isn't. After going through school, what it has taught me is that mitochondria is the power of the house of the cell. I know that A square plus B square is equal to C square, but that's not exactly what I'm going to go up and say in an interview. It's not going to teach me how to budget myself. It's not going to teach me how to survive in a job market that is competitive like it is right now. I don't really have the practical skills to move on with my life and to move in the world that we are today. I will not being taught the real critical thinking skills that we need. I'm not being taught to think for myself and to be creative. In fact, the exact opposite is happening. The current education system is killing creativity and turning it into complacency. We are putting so much emphasis on examinations, and those examinations put so much emphasis on the keywords and those exact lines that we need to write down. And the only resort that our students can come to is memorizations. We remember, and we vomit it up onto the paper. Is it really an Indian education system that we have today, or do we have an Indian literacy system? Do we have an Indian mugging up and memorization system? Do we really educate ourselves? Do we really have the power to learn and relearn and unlearn? We don't. And move on to the point my opponent brought up earlier about the British education system. The system we have right now was not created for us. The system was created specifically by Thomas Babington Macaulay to destroy our Indian culture, as our moderator brought up earlier. Macaulay specifically created the education system while dismissing the Indian cultural heritage that we have. He created it with the belief that the Western education system is the best, with a colonial and imperialist mindset. That same colonial and imperialist mindset is being used with children today. We're turning into assembly line products. It's like we're coming straight out of a factory. We aren't some kind of factory product to be made exactly the same like everyone before us or everyone after us. We're human beings. We need to keep our distinctiveness, our uniqueness, and that's constantly being destroyed by the schools we have today. Do we really want 65% of the population is the youth, as our moderator said earlier, and 65% of this population is going to turn into a brainless worker who's just going to take what is given to him or her and produce it out onto the paper. We won't have the ability to really think for ourselves and survive in the market today. That's all.
Tamanna, thanks again. Thanks again. Well spoken. I think you started with the Pada Likha Damad thing. Two species of damads are in great trouble right now. You know, one is after Modi ji's income tax and online tax submission, the IRS officers are not doing very well in the damad auction at all, right? And the second category, whom the state government has put in great problem, are the teachers, right? especially the teachers, the state school teachers, were a little bit unsure how they managed to get their jobs, you know, and whether they're going to hang on to it for the next few months or so. So whenever you talk about the damads on the auction scale, a little bit like doctors in private medicine, so be a little bit wary, you know, which species you're putting your hand onto. And be fair to Macaulay, you know, in 1854, I think, when he lands in India, his main brief is to produce clerks. That's why he was sent, you know. That's why he was sent. You know. His main brief was to make clerks. And after he spent about 5 years in education, the next 4 years he spent in drafting the Indian Penal Code. We are the only country where the penal code and the education system is written by the same person, and one looks like the other, right? So, you know, you've got to give Babington Macaulay. You know, people make him out to him to be some Hindi movie villain or something. You know, the man did his best for that time. But let's see. Who is sharpening the questions for Tamanna, and Tamanna is going to be interjected by Kanav Dhandania from Birla High School. Where are you, Kanav? Are you there? Young man, fire.
So, ma'am, the government of India has made internships mandatory, addressing the problem of practical skills. So does that not address that problem? And just because you don't have practical skills, does that show that the Indian education system has failed the nation at large?
Now, wait a minute. Your question. You see, that's a problem, you know, when a comment starts getting viral before it's spoken. That's the problem.
Indian education system.
First of all, you have a lot of insight into what Tamanna can and can't do. How you acquired that is your problem, you know. So I'm not going to get into that chronology at all. So the problem you have with her is regarding the skill side of it.
Yes, sir.
Right? Not her skill side of it.
General practice.
Those are two different matters. So what are you pursuing? Are you pursuing the skills or are you pursuing her skills?
Pursuing general skills,
No.
addressing her
Keep
problem.
the hand by your side. Otherwise, it'll look like the Aam Aadmi Party, you know. So, yeah. Right, fair enough. Tamanna, so what transpires between you and him is entirely different matter. For the sake of the debate, he has a point to make, I think, with the didactic side of things and skills. So probably what the young man means, being drowned by applause, probably not as much by logic, is that skills is a personal attribute. Do you agree with it or not?
Well, skills are a personal attribute, but going through the Indian education system, you need to have those skills developed. And we don't really have that much opportunity to develop them right now. Even after NEP 2020, it hasn't been fully implemented in all schools everywhere. We are still fully lacking on the skill education that we need, and we still haven't fully unlocked the potential that we could have in the future.
Thank you, Tamanna. I think you've touched on to something which probably will figure more in the discourses to come, which is the NEP 2020 and how much of NEP 2020. I wish we had some teachers speaking in this debate. You know, I think there are 50% stakeholders in this entire process. So NEP 2020 has already figured, and I am actually very keen to hear from you what the rest of you think about the offerings of the National Education Policy 2020. And we move over to DPS Ruby Park. And DPS Ruby Park will be opened by Scarlett Sen. Scarlett.
I define education as not only the squalls that felicitate a person for their academic excellence, But also, education is the filtered essence that is extracted from these paper scrolls, commonly called the degrees, which frames a complete life encompassing the intellectual, the aesthetic, the social, and the spiritual facets. A very good morning to one and all present here. From the ancient Gurukul system of India, dating back to 5000 BCE with its rigors of discipline, to the virtual classrooms that happen to be a byproduct of the coronation of Corona, the saga of the Indian education system has been a vibrant odyssey of progressiveness. Looking at the kaleidoscope of achievements post-independence, two words can be used to describe the education march, and that is awakening and prudent foresight. Let me first mention with a tone of humble pride the esteemed IITs, IIMs, and IISc, the names of which are taken with much respect worldwide. India establishes itself in the field of excellence in science and research, and nothing can justify this better than our ISRO. If this isn't serving the nation well, I don't know what is. Trying to etch a very different perspective, I would like to enumerate that we have, with open arms, accepted the wholesome qualities of the Occidental academic pulse, thereby blending it with our own roots, and in this process, what remains indigenous is the tenets of our culture and the touch of our heritage, which have so wonderfully homogenized with the current scholastic pattern. Let us not be so myopic as to consider technological innovation as the only yardstick to measure intelligence. Our focus envisages development in the field of our very own art and culture, which has fetched us global felicitation and respect. The opposition pointed out that we do not have the ability to unlearn, but I disagree. And this is evidenced by the abolition of Section 377. And yes, I agree that there are several instances of exploitation of women, even in the 21st century, but the very fact that we are condemning these acts is a result of the realization that has been fostered to us by the Indian education system. Thus, there hardly remains any domain that is bereft of the achievement of women. Names like Indra Nui, Shikha Sharma, Kalpana Chawla, Sudha Murthy, Arundhati Roy, and Sushma Swaraj are gifts of the Indian education system. Returning to facts which may seem cliched but are undeniable truths, our Indian doctors are hoisting the flags of honor on both Indian and foreign soil, thereby holding the lineage of the saints Patanjali and Sushruta of the Vedic ages. I echo the words of Rabindranath Tagore. The primary objective of education is to enable the preservation of a perfect symphony between one's life and the world outside, and that, my friends, is the true essence of the Indian education system. True, there are a lot more battles that need to be waged, a lot more work that needs to be done. But please let us drink from the chalice of the steps taken, and let us bathe in the dawn of the celebration of the sun that shall surely rise. With this, I rest my argument. Thank you.
So well spoken, Scarlett. I was getting a bit worried when you said IITs, IIMs, and then mentioned medical colleges. But you threw that bit towards the end. And your emphasis on women, welcome. I'll give you a little snapshot. What happens with women in medicine? I don't know how many of you are aware of it. I'll tell you for a fact, 90% of the doctors aren't. At the intake level in medicine in India, we take in about 90,000, maybe already a lakh now, of medical students per year. At the intake level, nearly 58% are women. 58%. Now, do not clap. Hear the second bit. That's what happens when you clap at half a sentence. The last half is when they come out in real life, only 30% of the women survive. Right. So education system, especially in medicine, we have a lot of work to do. So 58 to this year I was looking through the NEET statistics. In fact, this year probably the number of women applicants in NEET will far outnumber the men. So, but what's happening at the end of the system, we have a very unfriendly system to women, very unfriendly system. So I'm ever so glad you mentioned the aspect of women. Well done, Scarlett. And Scarlett will be engaged by Sadia Hussain of Loreto House. Sadia, is that you?
Yes, sir.
Yes, Sadia, please.
So, madam, you did talk about women, and you mentioned chosen few women. You do realize that these chosen few women, they are the
Sadia, could you stop for a minute? Can somebody adjust that microphone, please?
You do realize that the chosen few women are a particular class, they are a privileged class, and the majority of women do not really get the education that is provided by the government or otherwise.
May I answer the question?
Yeah, please.
Thank you so much for your question, ma'am. I would like to put forward that while concluding the speech, I mentioned that let us drink from the chalice of the steps taken. And I also mentioned that a lot more work needs to be done. So even when a couple of women can come out from the confinement of the parda, can remove the veil that was put in front of them, then I believe that we're already on a journey, and what matters most is the first step that we take, and that calls for a celebration in itself. Thank you.
Very well answered, very well answered. I don't know whether anybody is going to dwell on the fact later on. You see, the point remains, 75 years or not, we still have the last 20% of the population to make them literate, right? So literacy has stopped at 80% for almost the last 15 years. Give it a thought, give it a thought. Onaronno Sarkar, have I got the name right? Almost? So,
the attempt, just like yesterday, was quite good, sir, but I am Onoronno, everybody. I am Onoronno Sarkar, representing DPS Shubi Park. Friends, members of the House, and of course my worthy opposition, lend me your ears. I come here to edify you, not to deceive you with talks of how the education system has only served us well. Okay, so let's perform an experiment because the labs are busy storing volumes of written practicals. Okay, so BBV mentioned mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. How many of you disagree with this statement? Can we have a raising of hands? Please? Okay, so the entire hall seems to agree. Now, this is something I think a lot of us think we remember from our days in school. Well, I'm sorry to say even this is wrong. Yeah, even this is wrong. Mitochondria is the plural form of the word. Mitochondria are the powerhouses of the cell. Now, why did we know the wrong counterpart to this? It's because we wrote it in our answer scripts and we got the marks that was allotted. And that brings me to my very first point, incomplete learning disguised as smart studying. But of course, my worthy opponents would claim that in this too, we are educated. Okay, so let's talk about science. The world aspires to take science out of the classrooms. The world aspires to take science out of the classrooms, and India has succeeded in doing so. But instead of the labs, we have taken it to the coaching institutes. Akash, Batash, Patal. The 130 billion quota industry breeds students who, after 4 years of college and 2 years of an MBA, are restricted to desk jobs. That is the condition of the IIT and IIM students who are very sought after according to the proposition. So science has become the holy grail for judging students these days. A certain Mr. Rabindranath Tagore and a lot of other literary talents might not have passed the litmus test of today. Okay, so there are 12 speakers coming up, and I believe I should refresh you with a small story. A and B were two twins. However, due to some problem, A was a foot shorter than B. So A started drinking 5 times the amount of milk B was drinking. So after 10 years, A was 2 feet taller than B. But A still continued drinking 5 times the amount of milk. Does that surprise you? Does that seem absurd? welcome to the Indian system of caste reservation. 64% of the seats in AIIMS, our premier medical institute, are reserved for candidates on the basis of caste. Now, I am not against reservation. I believe economically weaker sections of society and persons with disabilities should receive some sort of reservation, but not a man in an Armani suit with zero talent in medicine just because he holds an SC certificate. Well, my worthy opponents will tell you that this is the best way forward because, after all, we are educated, right? Now, we are educated in the sense that the definition of education has changed. We have changed the definition of what education means. All I see around me when I look around are people pursuing what the propositions seem to hold in very high regard, degrees and diplomas. These are nothing but gilded covers to a book which is hollow inside. Where are the students when we need them? A student can solve differential equations in less than a minute but fails to cook for 3 in an emergency situation. Is this education? Is this what we call educated today? Okay, so a failure of contemporary education once said, you cannot judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree. Well, I believe you might think, why should we listen to this failure? Well, because he's a fish who failed to climb a tree, but he ruled the oceans. His name is Albert Einstein. And this man defined education. He said, education is that which remains in our hearts after everything taught in the class has been forgotten. And that is the thought which I want to linger in this room while the rest of the debate continues. Thank you so much. You've been a lovely audience.
Extremely valid point. I couldn't agree with you more. That's a subject for an entirely different debate, but a debate in waiting and a debate in process that especially reservation in medicine has gone, postgraduate medicine. Undergraduate medicine still has some iota of sense left in it, but postgraduate medicine has completely, and that again is a separate topic because it's just succumbed to knee-jerk populism. It's just been a subject of knee-jerk populism, very incisive points made over there, and these will be countered. And we have a query for you coming your way in the form of Anuj Poddar from La Martiniere for Boys. Anuj.
Right. Thank you for your speech, sir. You openly criticized the education system, but considering some context that the nation went over 200 plus years of colonial rule where it was spiritually, economically, and culturally dilapidated, do you believe 75 years of continued growth and progress and development is not enough for a nation of 1 billion people?
Okay, so you seem very convinced about the fact that 75 years has grown the country in terms of education. Let's go back to Lord Macaulay. He once said that he wanted to breed a class of Indians who was Indian in color and blood, but Western in thought, speech, and expression. Now I pose this question to the entire House, for internal thought, of course. Hasn't he been successful? Are we not having this debate in English? Are we not wearing shirts and trousers while discussing our country? Have we progressed?
That's a very clever way of looking at it, very clever way. But the other way is that had it not been for the fact that a certain fellow called Martandya Varma had not defeated the Dutch East India Company about 90 years earlier down in the Malabar coast, the way the Dutch East India Company, read Amitabh Ghosh's The Curse of the Nutmeg. And if you go through Amitabh Ghosh's Curse of the Nutmeg, you can put your world in perspective over there. The whole of Asia would have been swarmed by the spice trade. So this debate would have been in Dutch otherwise. If not in English, it would have been in Dutch. Such is history. Extremely good points, and thank you for bringing in a lot of fresh perspective and fresh air to the debate. Well done. So DPS Ruby Park has really, the ambit, the spectrum of the debate is getting a bit wider, and that is exactly what the doctor ordered. And with that, we move over to Loreto House, and speaking for the motion, we have Umika Panda. Umika, for the motion.
I'm going to begin by making one very simple statement. No social or infrastructural system in the world is flawless today. Every system faces its own challenges and its own problems and set of issues. And the proposition today is not here to claim that we have a perfect education system. We have a long way to go. However, what we do claim is the very important word in today's motion, the word well. Members of the House, the word well brings in an element of subjectivity. What you may qualify as well need not be the same as what I qualify as well. And I'm here to prove a very simple point to you that, in fact, this very education system has served our nation well over the past 75 years. Now, let's look at pre-independent India, right? Going back to even before 1947. This very country was colonized by the British for 200 years, having destroyed our education system entirely. We were a nation that was struck by mass poverty. From that position in history, to be able to stand here today and debate on our education system, do you not feel that the system has stood the test of time, that the system has indeed served the nation well? We talked about poverty just a second back. Now think about it this way. In a nation that is struck by poverty, for the average rural family, education becomes a secondary concern. They are more happy, rather not happy, they have no choice to send their child into employment, to earn wages, to sustain their family, sustain their ecosystem, rather than having them educated. That was the reality of the world we lived in. That was the reality of the country that we belong to. From that point in time, when the government had to introduce food as an incentive to educate a child in rural India, or sometimes teachers would go door to door, and these are real cases that have happened as part of government initiatives, we have come a very long way. Today we have 600,000 primary schools in India. The middle schools have increased by 16 folds in the country, and we have a wide establishment of higher secondary institutions for educational purposes. From that point in time, to be able to stand here today and even make this speech, now, have we not been able to stand this test of time? A very important point to keep in mind that one of the side opposition members talked about, he said degree and diplomas are indeed gilded covers. Members of the House, the reality of today's world is that these very degrees and diplomas are a part of the qualifications you need to have to be able to be seated in among an audience like this, to be able to get jobs, to be able to have a career. That is the survival instinct in today's society, that it is necessary for you to be able to compete in this rat race. That is not something that this education system can take accountability for. That is something that is globally applicable. Why are we all being educated today? At the end of the day, we need to be able to stand a certain chance in this rat race that we are going to be thrown into. And these very degrees and diplomas do define us. That is a different reality and a different debate to be had. But is that a fault of the education system? No. A very important point also to keep in mind is that the new education policy is in fact a recognition of the fact that we do have a long way to go, which is why it deals with problems like quality, access, affordability, equity, things that people, our policy has been revised over the years for a reason, because we believe that this education system is indeed a work in progress, but that is not the crux of today's debate. The crux of today's debate is whether or not in the past 75 years it has been able to serve us well. And I believe that that is something that has truly been done. And even though the policy has not been implemented in its entirety yet, that is the nature of any policy that comes into play, members of the House. It is not something that happens in the snap of a finger. That is how administration and policy works. And the truth of today's debate is that this education system has given us the empowerment, has given us the voices that we have today to be able to even be having this debate. Thank you.
Very assertive, Bhumika, very assertive. There comes a time in debates when you almost have a feeling that as if one side is walking with the debate and then the other side has got to snatch it back, right? So had it been team debating, I have a feeling you've perhaps just done that. And what you were actually looking for, Umika, is when we say Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, 15th of August 1947, the hour of midnight, our tryst with independence, Indian women had a literacy rate of 7%. Indian men had a literacy rate of 16%, right? So 7% literacy for women, 16% for men. Yes, a lot of work needs to be done. The overall literacy for women today stands at 56%, and men, I think, somewhere around 77 to 78%. So probably, if you were a little bit more of a statistician, you would be clawing onto those numbers. Well spoken. You've somehow got control of the steering wheel a little bit, and I always admire debaters who are able to do just that. But you cannot get away lightly, no matter how well you've spoken, and you will be countered by Khushi Gothari from Sri Shikshatan School.
Ma'am, you spoke about how the education system cannot be held accountable for the problems in the country, such as unemployment.
Can you do us a favor, young lady? Yes. Just come towards the center. Otherwise, it feels like a little bit like a vampire movie, you know. We have all these voices that we hear, faces we don't see. And I don't take to horror movies very well, you know. So, albeit in the daytime. So, that's it, you know. It's always good to put a face to the voice, isn't it? Otherwise, we'll be like a politician, you know. Come on, straight away.
So, ma'am, you had spoken about how the education system cannot be held accountable for problems in the country like unemployment. Yet, the education system does teach in regional languages, and the people who do their schooling in regional languages, they find it hard to find jobs in big multinational corporations or pursue degrees, professional degrees, without the proper English training.
Very good point.
How do you justify that?
Very good point. Regional languages, there you have. Such an important point.
Firstly, I never talked about the education system not being accountable for problems like employment. What I was saying is that we require certain degrees and qualifications, which is the nature of the competitive world we are in today. Secondly, as far as regional languages and English is concerned, there is a reason there are spoken English courses widely prevalent all over the country. Is that something that puts students who are studying in vernacular mediums at a disadvantage? Absolutely. But then that is the language of the people that is spoken globally. That is not something that the education system, by and large, is trying to discriminate against those who are part of regional curriculums. There is a reason that the new education policy has actually recommended the setup of multiple institutes just for the purpose of regional languages, as well as having English training as a part of their curriculum, because they understand the nature of the world that we live in today. That, ma'am, is a reality, not something that we can be held accountable for.
Well said. And you know, as time goes on, you'll probably depend more on your mobiles to translate for yourself, you know. So probably life will be a little less harder in a country of 36 major and some 300 acknowledged and recognized languages. Well done, Umika. So Umika is being followed by Tista, and Tista Ray from Loreto. Tista is going to definitely try very hard to have the initiative back to her. Yes.
Thank you, sir. I would urge all of you to look at the motion on the screen once again to remind you that we are not discussing today whether the Indian education system is a good or a bad one. What we are here to discuss is whether or not it has served our nation well, whether or not it is built to suit the character of our country. I will be quite the statistician and say that today's debate is laced with privilege because us in this room, we don't constitute India. You know what constitutes India? The rural population at 64.6%. You know what constitutes India? The student population at over 65%. That is the India we need to cater to. Today, can any member of the proposition stand up and say that a young girl in Rajasthan is getting even close to the same opportunities or the level of learning that we are? If an education system cannot serve or reach every student in the country, can we say with confidence that it is serving the nation well? Today, in rural areas, there's poor infrastructure, there is teacher absenteeism, there is lack of educational awareness in these areas. Isn't that a problem we must deal with? The very simple problem, ladies and gentlemen, is that quality education is not accessible. And accessible education is not of quality. A member of the proposition mentioned the midday meal as an advancement. Let me tell you, if you're a government school and if the only incentive to go to government schools is to get a midday meal, that is a fallacy of the government schools, because they are not providing education which is good enough to be incentive for students to go to school. The British colonialism has been a huge topic of discussion today, and 75 years later, we are still reeling from the colonial hangover. Let's talk about that part, because we are discussing the past, the present, and the future of this country in the language of our colonizers. And the problem goes far deeper than that. 2/3 of our country cannot speak English. There are over thousands and thousands of mother tongues that are spoken in this country. And it's not even about that. The real issue is this language discrepancy causes a deep-rooted discrimination in our country. Spoken English courses, you say? What does that say about our country? What does that say about the playing field not being level? If people are educated in vernacular schools and they have to get spoken English courses in order to be even part of the rat race, are we successful in serving India? I'm glad that the new education policy was brought up so often, because it proves my point essentially. It proves, and it's a great, great initiative, but that just proves that over the past 75 years, there have been so many problems that the government has finally recognized, and therefore it chooses to aid those steps. Now, I would use a quote from Three Idiots to sort of aid my point, but unfortunately it's in Hindi, and the rules of today clearly say that it's English only and no vernacular is allowed. We will be able to say, ladies and gentlemen, that Indian education system has served India well when objectivity will be valued over theory, when education will lead directly to employment, when students will shine in subjects that they want to shine in. IIMs and IITs are great. They're great examples of achievement. But what happens to students who don't get into IIT and IIMs? You know what you get when you have students who've tried and who don't get in? You get over 1 million search results in under 0.49 seconds when you search the phrase student suicides in India. Therefore, I'm not bashing the current Indian education system. I'm simply saying that it's nowhere close to being inclusive, because as the chairperson has mentioned, the gender discrepancy itself, the language discrepancy, the caste discrimination that exists, can we really stand here and say with confidence that it has served our country, our nation, to be qualified as well enough? Hopefully in 75 years, we wouldn't need to have an opposition for this debate, but today we do, and it's a strong one.
Very passionate, very strong, very passionate, Teesta. 75 years is not that long a time, is it? Since when has Britain been independent? The American system is covering across 3 centuries, right? Yeah, we are there for 75 years. I'll just make one point of information there, that, you know, if you have anything to do with medicine and social health, I bow my head down in respect to the midday meal. You are absolutely right. Midday meal cannot be an incentive to education, but midday meal, when it is evaluated and assessed a few years from now, will change significantly, not completely, the malnutrition. You know, the sort of poor nutritional status, the protein calorie malnutrition that exists in the young men and boys and girls of that age. It'll be a very, you know, that probably, I think, hit people as hard as the schools being shut during the pandemic. It is a lack of the midday meal, which I think was a serious nutritional detriment. Now, Teesta will be questioned by Ridhima Kuthari of Sushila Birla Girls' School.
Hi, Teesta. So my question to you is that you said that people from rural India, they don't get quality education. If that is true, then how do you explain that people coming from rural India, like Sir Dhirubhai Ambani, have progressed so much and set up entire industries like the Reliance industry?
So may I answer?
Please.
Yeah. Thank you for your question. Sir Dhirubhai Ambani and a lot of other people who've come from village backgrounds are great, and they're great examples of the achievements that we've made, but they are the exception and not the norm, as much as you choose to believe it. Today, the fact that we are having a debate in a setting like this, where I don't see anybody from a rural setting right now, is proof enough that conversations like this need to reach out to people who actually need to hear about it. We're not talking about whether education is provided to people from rural areas. We're talking about whether the education is good enough to qualify as the education that we receive. So,
Point taken, Tista, please. Well spoken. And Loreto, till before we get to the break, I think there is a brief intermission. So before we get to the intermission, we have Lama Tenia for boys. And Lama Tenia for boys will be opened by Orkon Bushu, right? Orkon, good luck.
Right, am I audible?
You are.
So before I go into my constructives, I just couldn't help but noticing all the judges and especially the moderator, all of them are products of our Indian education system. So is the opposition trying to insinuate that they haven't served our nation well? Also, sir, I'm not trying to butter the judges or the moderator. I really do like that iPad. Anyways, moving on. So, now what I feel is important over here is to make an analogy. Something that, because our education system, what it truly suffers from is misfocused hate. Now, let me draw you an analogy. Let's say you have a bullock cart and you have a BMW. As absurd as it is, imagine it on the same street, but the road doesn't exist. The road isn't comfortable for the drive. It is not made completely. That is the situation we live in. The road is our environment, and the bullock cart is our education system. And the BMW is the perfect example of an education system, if you may. Now, if you put that BMW on that road, it would move at the same speed as that bullock cart. Irrespective of how much you may hit the bullock, you may want to remove the guise of the bullock because he's wearing a hijab maybe, or if you try to insult his race, religion, his ability, he will still not be able to move faster than the BMW, and he will still move at the same speed. Now, coming to actually how our education system has served the nation well, the most obvious thing has been brought up by the opposition, the doctors and the engineers. The doctor sitting right over there, serving our nation well with his very wonderful story that he just shared about the police officer raised in our education system. Now, understand that our IT sector has contributed for around 194 billion US dollars in the financial year 21, and its domestic revenue was estimated to be around $45 billion. Now, this sector, this entire industry is being pioneered and expanded by people brought up in our education system and no one else. Now, coming to the point about the Western education. Now, I agree we were Westernized and we have the Western education in place. But understand that that Western education comes with the Western soul of inquisitiveness. That Western soul allows us to be proud of our culture and celebrate it wherever we go. Understand that if it wasn't in place, we would have a cultural split in our nation with each person signifying a different state which existed back then. But today we are unified and we're proud of this multicultural nature of our diverse country. Now, let me focus on another important part of this motion, which is the for 75 years and nation well. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm not saying that that this education system will survive throughout the existence of our country. All I'm trying to put forth here is that for 75 years, we cannot deny the fact that it has actually helped us. Understand that there is no perfect system. We have to find perfection in the imperfection that exists in our system. And that is what is important. We cannot deny the fact that for 75 years, for our 75th, for our platinum jubilee of independence this month, that this education system has not helped us. And this is where I rest my case, a proud product of the Indian education system, hoping to serve the nation well.
Thank you, Orkon. Once the debate is over, please give me your testimonials in writing. So I think it'll come up very handy in the future. When we talked about Western education system, the poor chap Thomas Babington gets, sort of mauled very often. But all these business of age-wise and class-wise, a fixed, rigid pattern to education, this is actually an Austro-Prussian system. This is actually a Germanic system of education, and which was handed over to the British. So I'm not insinuating that you all have a go at the chief guest after this. So I'm not trying to say that. But this is a product. This is a philosophical product when the Industrial Revolution was in full swing in Europe. So this is very much an Austro-Prussian educational philosophy. And poor chap Babington gets hit for everything that's bad. Now, Orkon made a very impressive start, and especially his analogy was wonderful. But question is Harshita Bhalla impressed? Harshita of Birla Balika Vidyapith.
So my question for you is that all of us present here are the products of this very education system that we have in India. And comparing with outside countries or the foreign countries, here in India, we all mug up and learn the things that we are taught. So isn't this rote learning the biggest obstacle for employability and generating newer employability?
Right. Thank you for your question. Coming to that part about the comparison with the foreign countries, we cannot compare ourselves with the foreign nations simply because of the fact the conditions existing here are very different from what may be existing there. Moreover, coming to the rote learning part, understand that what was needed for 75 years has been done. We've created a stable economy of sorts, and we've created a stable influx of jobs. That's all that's required. And now I've never denied the fact that rote learning is all there is. There is room to expand in the education policy, but let's not forget the gain that has been served for the nation in these 75 years of independence. Thank you.
Thank you, Anirudh. It is Anirudh next, is it? Anirudh Chaudhary, Lama Tinea for Boys, against the motion.
%80 engineers in the country are unemployed. 70% MBAs are involved in subpar jobs. And more importantly, ladies and gentlemen, the newspaper headline yesterday read, IS officer assaults IIT fresher. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, it will be as easy for me to disprove this motion as it was for me to pass my ICSE because I didn't have to take any. Ladies and gentlemen, the true purpose of education is not only to feed information. Do not let side proposition take you by a ride by confusing literacy with education. Education stands for imparting morality, for injecting virtues and values, ladies and gentlemen. And in the 75 years, ladies and gentlemen, which has borne 3 generations, has misogyny been any lesser? Have we solved communal problems? Are we any better with regards to racism? The answer is no. And ladies and gentlemen, this is where our education system has failed the nation. Ladies and gentlemen, understand at this moment that the education system does not uphold quality. The higher education system that we study in has become just a certificate exam and not a merit exam. I think 5 years down the line, the only requirement which would be to get an ICSE pass certificate was to email them your Aadhaar card. Ladies and gentlemen, understand at this point of time, it is about just passing the boy and pushing him ahead. It is not about actually imparting quality education which will help him serve the nation. To actually advocate my constructive, I have testimonials from Fortune 500 companies and from startup founders. They say that whatever knowledge they required to start their business have been self-taught and consumed from abroad, and the Indian education system did not serve them. The Indian education system, ladies and gentlemen, has been primitive and failed to evolve. It is the same syllabus that I study, that my dad studies, and probably even my grandfather. The national education policy was implemented back in the day when modernized school used to be a only girls' school. And they have changed to co-ed and it has still not been adopted, ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, I have been in the Indian education system for 15 years. I do not know anything about financial management. I hardly know about AI, and I am completely oblivious of what compliance means. What I actually know is, and I'm very proud to say, that the formula for solving quadratic equation is Sridhar Acharya's formula, x equal to minus b plus minus b square minus 4ac by 2a. That is all I know. Our education system, ladies and gentlemen, is completely theoretical without any practical knowledge or research-based knowledge. And this is what is required for us to actually serve the nation. Side proposition is very proud about the IITians and MBAs that have gone abroad and made our country proud. Ladies and gentlemen, the education system has served them. But has it served our nation? Not. It has served companies like Google. It has served America, but not our country, India. It has actually taken away the true minds which would actually have been invested in the growth and development of India. But today it is being employed for raising the market capitalization of companies like Alphabet. It is also depriving the country of the GDP, which they would have contributed if they would have stayed in India. Now, ladies and gentlemen, addressing the elephant in the room, the reservation system. It is more challenging to calculate the general seats than to by subtracting the SC and SC seats than to actually fill out the application form, ladies and gentlemen. There are so many quotas that I cannot even think about. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you an analogy. Today, if you are sick, will you go to a merited, credible doctor, or would you go to a doctor who has just passed because of quota and reservation? The answer is you would go to a credible doctor. But the sad part here is that the credible doctor may not even be allowed to practice because he won't even get to the college because of the reservation system, ladies and gentlemen. And when this reservation system exists, we cannot have the nation being served well because it is not the quality and merit being applauded. It is just about your place of being. And with this, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very proud to oppose.
I think just before the break, Anirudh, you literally rushed through a lot of points, a lot of important points, primary amongst which was your concern for modern high for girls, right? So that we haven't forgotten. So that rings in our mind. A lot of important points. You know, in our days of youth, which was a long time back, when we used to go for the IIT Spring Fest, IIT Spring Fest debate and all. So there were a few more, not me, few more mischievous characters, more mischievous than myself. So if you entered the campus of IIT Kharagpur, there used to be a plaque. I've not been there for ages. I don't know what the plaque is still there or not. And that plaque used to read, IIT blah, 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 in the service of the nation, right? You know, IIT used to be a Hijli detention center before, pre-independence, whatever. So the plaque read, in the service of the nation. And the first thing that all the fest participants used to do was to stick a bit of paper on the plaque which read, in the service of the United States of America, right? So I think that kind of summarizes many of the points you made. You breezed through a lot of points, but honestly speaking, digitization, Aadhaar card, voter ID, computerization of Indian railways, these have really been, and the e-voting system. I tell you, many developed countries, when I was in England, with a population of 7 crores, 6 to 7 crores, they have trembling knees trying to digitize their electoral voting system. So digitization has really been one area, not flawless, but we've done something. Anirudh has given us a buffet of thoughts. And just as before we break, we request Kavya Mahajan of DPS Ruby Park. Kavya, what are your points of exception?
So first of all, thank you so much for your speech. You made it out to seem that literacy has almost no impact on employment, but that is not true, right? The people who have gotten at least the basic education from India, that also qualifies them for a lot of higher education that they might get from digital sources, and it also opens up a lot of opportunities for them. That basic education, the Indian system has been able to provide quite effectively, hasn't it?
Okay, this reminds me of a quote by our Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi. Our Indian education system creates slaves, not entrepreneurs. Ladies and gentlemen, what our Indian education system does is just imparts and feeds us with information and makes us capable to be corporate slaves. It does not equip us enough to start our own businesses, ladies and gentlemen. It does not equip us enough to actually go out there and build something like the Reliance Industries, and that is what is required as of date. A minimum literacy rate will not serve the nation well. If we actually truly want development of the nation, our education system has to change. Thank you.
Thank you, Anirudh. I think those were very, very important points. And the first half of the debate, I think, are we breaking for a while? We are, right. So I think fabulous debating for the first half. And we've got all the points probably. I'm sure there is more to come. And was this debate held a month earlier? A month earlier, about 1 crore of Chinese students gave the most difficult exam ever in the world. I think it's called Gaokao or Gaokao or something. So that is to cheer us up a bit, that we are not probably at the roughest end of the stick, right? So I think we are we are having a brief intermission, which is about, what, 15 minutes, young man?
20 minutes.
Is it? All right.
We will now have a break for 20 minutes. We shall resume the session at 12:30 p.m. sharp. May I request you to listen to the following announcements carefully. Participants who have already spoken are requested to proceed to the canteen along with their accompanying teachers. Participants who have not yet spoken are requested to report backstage and assemble in the green room. I repeat, participants who have not yet spoken are requested to proceed to the canteen and assemble in the green room. All others in the auditorium are requested to kindly note tea and refreshments are available in the canteen area for all on sale. Our volunteers and teachers shall guide you to the canteen. Ladies and gentlemen, while our tea break is on, we present to you a short audiovisual on the journey of the prestigious N Birla Memorial Invitational Debate. The audiovisual will play on the screen. You may enjoy it for the next 20 minutes. Ladies and gentlemen, we are just about to begin. I request everyone to kindly take your seats. All are reminded to kindly switch off their mobile phones or keep them on silent mode. Ladies and gentlemen, please be settled for us to begin. Thank you. Over to our chairperson.
Thank you again. Request the House to settle down. Generally, in the debates, we are quite used to replenishing your content, sharpening your arguments. But right now, I think both the audience and the speakers are in a state where they are adequately replenished calorie-wise. Yes? So we've been very well fed, very well looked after. And just a request from those of you sat next to me, should I doze off anywhere in between, do give us a little nudge. Okay. Now, let's get on in the thickness of things. And in this debate, ladies and gentlemen, we move on with the second half. And opening the second half will be Sri Shikshayatan School. We request N Birla Deb of Sri Shikshayatan for the motion.
Sir, I just have a question before I begin. Will those 50 tips come in installment or once altogether?
Pardon?
Will those 50 tips to not be a doctor come in installments or once altogether?
I think we'll all do it in one go.
That will be better for me.
Thanks.
All right, so today, as you can see, most of us here are female debaters, so I think that speaks loads about the misogyny you suggest, LMB. Also, our Prime Minister, Sri Narendra Modi himself has an OBC certification, just putting it out there. Very good afternoon to one and all present here. This is N Birla Deb of Sri Shikshayatan School speaking firmly for the suggested motion. Education in a nation is not just a matter of socio-political or economic standing, it is a matter of national security, because we're all aware of what happens when uneducated young men fall prey to the bullet and the gun. Hence, to paint a picture of the Indian education system since 1947, I present the House with 4 E's. The first one being expansion. The British left the India with 16% literacy rate, 32 million students dropping out of schools, and that seems to be about it. I seem to have forgotten the last statistical data. That's fine, I'll move on to today. Today, India has 74% literacy rate and 0.7 million students dropping out of school. If that is not progress, then I do not know what you call progress, ladies and gentlemen. The fact that the Indian education system has not remained static for the last 75 years is proof enough that it is constantly evolving. Earlier, when you dropped out of school, it was the fault of the parents. Now, it's the fault of the state, thanks to acts like the right to education. Okay. Right. So, EdTech has been soaring thanks to Digital India, and with that, I would like to move on to the second E, which is equity. One of the biggest challenges for the Indian education system has been to include the excluded from education, bring in people who have not had a fair chance at education to be a part of the system for irreversible reasons, be it gender, caste, race, sexuality, the list goes on. But today, we're standing at a place where we can receive and compete at fairgrounds. I agree, Loreto House, that the resources someone receives in Rajasthan or a village named Pimple Saudagar in Pune are not the same as someone who in Kolkata does. However, when we study under the same curriculum and are marked under a uniform marking system, that is the kind of uniformity we have introduced, that is the kind of level ground we have achieved. Moving on to the third E, which the opposition claims we have not achieved yet, is excellence, ladies and gentlemen.
More and more prestigious MNCs have been coming to colleges to offer respected positions because they're aware of the kind of education we have to provide. The opposition talks about brain drain. However, they fail to realize that the Indian education system has never failed to do its part of serving, be it education or the midday meal, be it in 1952 or in 2022. It is absurd to compare India to countries like the UK, where their entire population is equal to just the student population over here. And I am sure that none of the opposition members can provide for a better model which is suited to this economic, political, and social structure of our nation. And these achievements are what empower me. And the empowerment is supposed to be the fourth E, ladies and gentlemen. Indians are manufactured to think out of the box. Hence, we are known so widely for our jugars. Indian education system doesn't only teach us numbers or the 1789 French Revolution, it rather adds value behind these teachings. It empowers us, it empowers our brains to react to not only these small life-altering unit tests, but also to the bigger tests called life. Honor or no, I think you would appreciate that effort as well. English or trousers are as relevant in our culture as the electrical wires from China. Doesn't mean you start studying in candlelight all of a sudden. The fact that we're having this debate over here today is proof that the Indian education system not only wants to identify, but also wants to rectify its shortcomings, its flaws, and that is achievement enough for the Indian education system, for which I want to thank the opposition. With that, I would rest my case, but certainly not my stance. Thank you. Have a wonderful day, everyone.
Oindrila, a few more minutes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Very, very strong points. Oindrila has underlined some of the aspects that has been mentioned before. Personally, I'm a little bit mystified as how in the new the NEP it's being said and asserted that anybody dropping out of the education is a responsibility of the state. Now, it's a very good idea, but how will actually this be implemented remains a very important question. But Oindrila has thrown us a lot of positives. And Oindrila, I am sure, will be taken on some of what she has said by Kanav Thandania of Birla High School. Kanav?
Thank you, sir. Ma'am, the very difference between a nation and a state is the people, culture, and their shared identity. Do you still think that the Indian education system has served the nation when even today we use westernization and modernization synonymously, when even today we study English as a first language and our regional language as a second language?
All right, that is a great question, and thank you for that question. To answer that, I would just like to say that when we talk about westernization and modernization, we are talking about what we have adopted from another culture, right? We have not only adopted from the Western culture, ladies and gentlemen, we have adopted the best from all cultures globally, including not giving up our own culture. And I think that is one of the achievements which the Indian education system has put in front of us, taking the best out of all cultures and serving the people with the best from all around the world. In fact, if not anything else, I think it's a huge contribution towards globalization. Thank you.
Oindrila, you've made your points very strongly. Thank you again. But, when we look at the global perspective, probably you do consider that out of some 210 or 15 countries in the world, you have something like at least 20 countries with literacy rates of under 35%. And we are, look at, please sit. Please look at to the right and left of us. You look at to Pakistan. Pakistan probably has a very low higher education enrollment. Their literacy is stuck somewhere in the 50s. But compared to that, I think Bangladesh has done a lot better. Bangladesh is, I think, hitting 80 plus as far as their literacy is concerned. So Bangladesh has actually done very well in various social parameters. And literacy, and I'm not entirely sure what their effective enrollment in higher education is, but in terms of basic primary education, even with a population load of nearing 20 crores, they're not doing too badly. So we have to look around. But having said that, there are at least 10 countries in the world where literacy is well below 35%. So the world is a funny and a very unequal place. And to counter the assertiveness of N Birla, we have Fiona Raj from Shikshayatan. Fiona.
Right. So should I start, sir? May I go ahead? Okay, right. So we've had a lot of Indian universities being mentioned in the House today, one of them being IISc. And I'd like to talk about an instance from 2 months ago when IISc Bangalore took away all their fans from their hostel rooms. Not because they have to install air conditioners, but to prevent student suicide that happens under these walls. And if that is what we call the success of the Indian education system, then absolutely we have done well. But the truth is different, and hence I go against the motion. The fact that so many students have to contemplate suicide shows that mental health is one of the last things that the education system accounts for when it comes up with its syllabi. Therefore, it accounts for the fact that the Indian education system was never meant to serve Indian styles of cognitiveness to begin with. For example, we talked about Babington, and which brings us to the role of Indian education system. It was to churn out employees for British government when the British were over us. And when Loreto House speaks of how unemployment does not have anything to do with the education system, they're wrong, because the Indian education system had a responsibility for the last 75 years of promoting a mindset of healthy entrepreneurship and everything in between, which is hadn't done. Therefore, more and more people still want to be employees while no one wants to be employers. Think about it. How many of you want good jobs as opposed to creating more jobs? Which leads me to my next point. When La Martiniere for Boys talks about how we are a product of the Indian education system, we speak from a privileged view because 60%, as mentioned by Loreto House, of students are from rural environments where they do not even read in the reading level where they belong in. Their teachers are absent from their classes because they're made to do administrative work instead of teaching. And speaking of midday meal, if all the education system does is serve dal to students, then when will they be serving education? We are losing 10,000 rupees per annum because of this. And people who do have access to education have it even worse. Inclusive learning, someone stated. My God, ladies and gentlemen, our education system does not even suit for all learning styles. The syllabus is so stagnant that our sociology teacher teaches using the book she had when she was in school. It's like the Apple iOS coming up with new updates in the name of, whipping out a new camera every year. It doesn't really help. We spoke of NEP 2020, but what is the point of NEP 2020 if it's not even logistically useful? I can take mathematics with history now, I can take physics with history now, but what is the point if no school is logistically capable of giving me these subjects and no educational institution can give me admission based on these subjects? Moreover, research is paid no attention to in India. Our talent is lost to other countries because these people want to pursue higher education abroad. So when they speak of providing education to us, do they mean us or the US? Now, when the proposition speaks of India producing doctors every year, doctors hoisting the Indian flag with honor, well, they're beaten with the same flag when something goes wrong in the operation table, and that speaks volumes. Moreover, there are solutions to this. The union budget allocated to education is 3.1%. If we took away some from our defense budget and invested in education, perhaps Agnipath would still be a Hrithik Roshan movie. Moreover, relevant subjects must be invested in. Customized learning based on the student's learning level must be introduced. Because if the education system is not made for us, how is it going to serve us? And that is the question I would like to leave you with. Thank you very much.
Very strong, very emphatic, Fiona. Very strong and very emphatic.
Thank you, sir.
You have very pointedly questioned that what is the aim. The National Education Policy discusses at length the value of flexibility, that they're kind of breaking down the compartments of science, humanities, commerce, etc., Now, a question is being raised a little bit late in the debate, but it's very good somebody asked the question that what, after all, is the point of flexibility? So let's see whether we are able to clarify that. I'll just make a quick comment on because the US has cropped up so often in our conversation. Primary education and primary health indices of US over the last 4 years have been pretty bad. By developed country standards, the primary education penetration has decreased by almost 4%, and this is no fault of the virus, that the US life expectancy is the only economically developed country where the primary life expectancy has decreased by 3.5 years, right? So there is a lot of soul searching to do, regardless which side of the Atlantic waters you are located in. But Fiona has raised a very interesting question, and let's see whether she will be taken on that or whichever by Ananya Agarwal from Mahadevi Birla.
Ma'am, you talked about the midday meal program while stating that if all the education system does is serve dal to the people, when will it serve education? But considering the fact that the midday meal program has helped accelerate literacy rates by providing a space for more students to actually go to school and learn something, how do you justify your statement?
The justification is easy. You're speaking from a position of this auditorium, and you go to a school that absolutely fosters excellence, I'm sure. But when we actually look at the reality of the country, when we go to the grassroots levels, we can see midday meals being provided. We can see children running to school to actually, get their daily meal covered. But we can also see them running away the moment the lunch break is over. So if this is the reality that our country faces, then I don't know how you justify your stance, your question from a position of privilege. Let's be realistic and let's address what the education system stands for in the reality of the country, the grassroots. Thank you. Thank you for asking that question.
Fiona, thank you for your answer. Thank you for your answer. Very strong, but maybe a little bit evasive, but well done. Very difficult point to answer. You've done extremely well. Thank you for your very strong representation. We move over to Sushila Birla Girls' School, and heading the charge for Sushila Birla would be Madhu Nisha Majumdar. Madhu Nisha.
Well, considering the amount of noise we all make in class, I could count on my school for that huge cheer. Thank you. So I was watching a video the other day of random Americans being stopped on the street and asked to name a continent. And when I tell you what a disaster, people were up there naming South Africa, Alaska, and New Jersey as continents. By the end of it, my ears had detached from my head and all my brain cells had killed themselves. And every time I think about our education system, I remember the catastrophe caused by another. We always think about the Indian education system as an antagonizing force, but have we ever thought about the fact that there exists no perfect universal education system? Every education system has to work with the limits of its own country, and ours works with the limits of our country. When the British left India in 1947, our literacy rate was less than 20%. And right now, India's average literacy rate is 74%, which means that over the years, we have educated more people than the entire population of all the Scandinavian countries and Argentina combined. My worthy opponent from BBV talked about rote learning. She said, and I quote, "All we do is memorize and vomit it on paper." Well, rote learning is much maligned if you think about it, because it has a lot of benefits as well. Not in the content that we learn, which is of course very quickly forgotten, but in the life skill that it teaches us to hold a job in the future, putting aside our personal preferences, which is a huge life skill on its own. My worthy opponent from DPS talked about how degrees and diplomas are gilded covers and hollow inside. Well, let me ask him, has he ever gone to a doctor without seeing his degrees and his qualifications? And the day he can get an MBBS and an MD and a DM with the capability that he has today, that is the day he can say that they are gilded covers and hollow inside. He also talked about reservations, right? And he talked about how people who have no talent and have an SC certificate get in. Well, that's stratified inequality for you. All of us here sitting today have access to expensive coaching centers and expensive books because we are at a position of privilege and advantage. That's the inherent privilege that he is here from and sitting here from, and that's not his empathy that is speaking. That's his inherent advantage that he has in society. My worthy opponent from Loreto House talked about how vernacular language is not used and English is more emphasized, and that is a fault of the education system. Where it is not only for the fact that English is a universal language and the world being a global village needs uniformity, but also for the fact that these are the very people who speak English like it's their mother language and do not speak Hindi and Bengali because they don't know how to say it. These are the very ones who perpetuate this system of not speaking vernacular language. Instead of being so defensive about our system, we need to look at the huge change that it brought about, which in itself is commendable. It is because of the Indian education system that Indians have a reputation of high critical thinking skills. It is because of the Indian education system that Shashi Tharoor is Shashi Tharoor today, who can completely flabbergast all of us by saying exasperating Farrago. You know, every time I hear his Britain Oza's reparation speech, all I can think is that the English gave India English and Shashi Tharoor gave it back to the English. It is because of the Indian education system that people like Sudha Murthy and entire agencies like ISRO and HAL exist. It is because of the Indian education system that my proposition from LMB mentioned people like the brilliant Dr. Kunal Sarkar and our entire esteemed judges exist. It is because of this system and the knowledge imparted to us that we can stand here debating the very credibility of this system. So when you ask me whether our system has served us well or not, I would say absolutely yes. If not anything, we are sure that South Africa is a country and not a continent. Thank you.
Madhu, Nisha, brilliant points. Hang on for a few more minutes. You mentioned Sashi. You know, Sashi was a couple of years senior to us in school. For the reference of the audience, and if there is one interview which you want to watch of late, many of Satyajit Ray's interviews has surfaced in his centenary year, and do watch Satyajit Ray in the South Bank's show speaking to Melvyn Bragg. You know where Melvyn Bragg is? One of the cultural pundits of BBC Radio 4 and South Bank 4. So consider Satyajit Ray. I consider Sashi brilliant man, great education, been to St. Xavier's. I'm not sure whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. But anyway, consider Satyajit Ray, not Calcutta, Ballygunge Government School, you know, went to, no offense to presidentians, went to presidency and etc. But the way he comes up with his diction, the way he speaks, the man taught himself to speak. The man taught himself to articulate. You read through his life, you never get to know that he's ever been in a threatening distance with a Western classical musician. He not only played Western classical music, he wrote it. He used to write his own notations in Western classical notation. So that is the power of education inside. So Shashi is brilliant, but in his 100 years, when we remember him, do spare a thought, go back and have a quick watch of how the great Ray speaks to Melvyn Bragg. You know, if you shut your eyes and listen, you forget that who is the Britisher of the two, you know. The Melvyn Bragg's sort of half-cooked Cockney seems very, very flat compared to Ray's somber English. Very important points made by Madhunisha with a lot of fluency. And Madhunisha will be quizzed by Anuj Poddar from La Martinia for boys. Anuj?
Right.
Anuj, that side is extremely dark. I think she can't just come towards the center a bit.
Sure. Does this work? Right. Well, thank you for your speech, ma'am. You mentioned credibility and how the Indian education system has absolutely helped the nation.
Hold the mic up a bit.
Right, has absolutely helped the nation. I would love for you to absolutely justify how the only number which has risen is the number of applicants, but not the number of acceptances, and how the only number that has risen is the number of deaths and not the number of graduates. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your question. Well, first and foremost, about the number of deaths, that's a very complicated issue if you think about it. See, the Indian education system either makes you or it breaks you. It either prepares you for the future or it absolutely breaks you. And if you can get through those formative years, you can do wonders when you go ahead in the future. And that's the potential of Indian students, right? And secondly, about the number of acceptance rates, where if you look at all the students that are applying to so many colleges abroad, students getting into Ivy League colleges and Harvard and Cambridge and Oxford, their acceptance rates are rising. More and more Indian students are going abroad. They are getting higher education. So that in itself is very commendable and beautiful to think about. From where the Indian education system came 75 years ago to where it is now, absolutely it has served us nation. It has given us the doctors and engineers that we require. Maybe it's not...
Thanks, Madhunisha. We accept your answer. Well answered.
Thank you.
You remind me of Mr. Narayan Murthy once making a comment. He was asked that you're looking very tense. He said, yes, because my son is appearing for the IIT. So then they asked him, what happens if he doesn't get into IIT? He said, there is always Harvard. Okay. Thank you. Now, with every minute, those of you who watched Wimbledon till yesterday, you see how people watch Wimbledon to the right and left, to the left and right. And we get swayed by these brilliant speakers, one after the other. And carrying on the trail of brilliance will be Nayonika Ghosh from Sushila Birla Girls' School.
Ladies and gentlemen, are you familiar with the popular folk tale, The Emperor's New Clothes? It is basically a story about a vain emperor who gets exposed in front of his subjects. Now, I don't know about you, but it does make me think. Do we lie to cover the truth because the truth leaves us naked? That is exactly what the proposition is doing. My worthy opponents from Loreto House and La Martinia for Boys mentioned how the education system has been serving us well for these last 75 years. But who has it been serving well? It has served the rich urban elite well. But what about the poor and the downtrodden of society? Have they truly benefited from this system? Is there one monolithic education system in this country? Not how I see it. I see two very different systems. One that makes the rich richer, and the other that fails to empower the poor. My worthy opponent from DPS Ruby Park mentioned how the education system has developed, how it is inclusive and diverse now. If it has truly developed so much, if it has served us so well, why is it that most of the country still has to do angutha chap in most places? My worthy opponent from Sri Shikshayatan mentioned how we are marked fairly under a uniform system. That instantly reminded me of a video that I saw of a board topper from Bihar being asked about what constituted the subject of political science. You know what her answer was? Something about cooking, maybe. If that does not tell you volumes about the true nature of the Indian education system, I don't know what will. Learning the basics of different subject matter is a half-hearted attempt at best towards producing intellectuals who can then meaningfully contribute to society. What is the point of having so many IITs and IIMs if their graduates do not meaningfully contribute to Indian society? Most Indian parents want their children to do well in life, to be successful, do they not? But do they truly equip them with the tools that are required to achieve these lofty goals? They want them to be the next Sundar Pichai or Satya Nadella or Sudha Murthy, But these people are the exceptions, and no matter how many times the proposition name drops them today, they will not become the rule. Psychological concerns in children are also on the rise, especially behavioral issues and suicides. Shockingly, or should I rather say unshockingly, every 1 hour a student commits suicide in this country. In 2020, more students died of suicide than farmers. In spite of that, suicide is considered to be a wide problem in the country. But cases of student suicide are increasingly swept under the rug. Scholars have long linked farmers' suicide to India's agrarian crisis. It is time that society recognizes that cases of student suicide are a grave indicator of the crisis that the Indian education system is in. The proposition boasts about high literacy rates and high rankings in the world, but I would like to ask you, ladies and gentlemen, how can you consider us to be educated when the so-called educated members of the society still believe in the caste system? How can you consider us to be educated when honor killings and religious riots are still rampant? How can you consider us to be educated when this 21st century society still blames the victims of sexual assault rather than the perpetrators? How can you consider us to be educated? The simple answer is that you don't. Thank you.
Very strong and painful emphasis on student suicide and all the problems that Nonika has mentioned in form of the caste system. So you give us a lot of sad but lot of important food for thought, Nonika. And Sadia Hussain of Loreto. Sadia, you're with us? Yes. Your question time, Sadia.
Firstly, thank you for your speech, madam. Now my question to you is that there are many government schemes that have been introduced, that have been revised as and when necessary to combat this issue where children, where most of the population is illiterate. So what do you have to say about that?
Thank you for your question. You know, the reason that we have so many different schemes coming up year after year is because the original scheme was never implemented properly in the first place. Why do we need to have a different scheme every 5 years when the first one can be implemented properly? You know, we are a country of planners. We have 5-year plans, 10-year plans, you know, we plan for a lot. But when it comes to the implementation of the policies, we lag behind. Because the government changes, we don't know what to do. We keep blaming it on that. But how will these plans actually be implemented? That is the real question. So I don't believe that any of these plans have truly worked.
I think these are irrefutable points, Nanika, and it is said that this is a kind of disease that a dysfunctional federalism bears upon itself, because it is a problem. This is a very similar problem, policy implementation, both in healthcare and in education, because both of these subjects, you know, fall between two stools of the center and the state. Whether they are more center and less state, and less center and more state, what suffers at the end of the day is how well we are implementing it and where the accountability lies. So extremely important point. Policy implementation was pointed out by Noyonika. Very important points to have surfaced. Now we wait for Birla High School and Ram Daftari to give us a new sense of direction. Now that was a bit louder than the other cheers. I wonder why, you know. Well done. That is exactly what you would like to hear.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Let me begin by getting something straight. The education system of India is an evolving, dynamic and receptive process which has relentlessly catered to the needs of the nation for the past 75 years. How, you might ask? By keeping pace with what the nation has required whenever it has required through the decades. Ladies and gentlemen, a speaker from the proposition came up here and talked about how the education system was just producing cogs in a machine. I agree, ladies and gentlemen, but I ask you, cogs in which machine? The nation When India was founded, we needed pure, skilled manpower to develop our assembly line, to make our industry flourish. And that is what the education system provided. After that, we had colleges which came up and infrastructural development flourished. And today, when we've reached a level of development and we require innovators and entrepreneurs, our education system is responding likewise. Ladies and gentlemen, I ask you, why is a multidisciplinary approach to education being introduced? I ask you, why are internships being made mandatory? I ask you, why research is being encouraged so heavily? There were proposition speakers who came up and talked about rote learning. I'm pretty sure they're quite unaware of the idea of developing a resume. Ladies and gentlemen, we need to understand what is the exact logic behind developing, of doing an internship. It is to develop skills and the professional talent required to work in the professional sphere. Now let us talk about the midday meals. The proposition criticized the non-inclusivity of education. The entire reason behind the midday meal is so that education can become inclusive. I ask you, ladies and gentlemen, given the choice to a laborer who struggles to put meals in front of his family, would he send his children to work or to school? He would send them to work. But in the case of a midday meal, it provides him a short-term incentive to send his children to school, who can then be educated and be of service to the nation, ladies and gentlemen. Now, let me drop a bomb here. I believe that the Indian education system is what has sustained the nation, ladies and gentlemen. The Indian education system is what has kept our national identity alive. There is a very clear distinction between a country and a nation. A country is a sovereign state with a defined territory, but a nation is a sovereign state with a defined territory with people who have a shared identity. Who created the shared identity? The Indian nationalist movement. But what is perpetuating this? The education system. Since a young age, we've all learned about our shared past, a shared history, a shared heritage, a shared culture. What is that doing, ladies and gentlemen? It is emphasizing the fact in our minds that we have a collective destiny. It is emphasizing the fact in our minds that we Indians are willingly living together in this country to cooperate, work, and grow together. Now, students here talked about rote learning. Let me explain to them. Rote learning is a byproduct of the standardized system for the diverse populations, which is required, ladies and gentlemen. There is a difference between education and the education system. Education is a continuous, lifelong, never-ending process, while the education system has to cater to the masses. And there will be some subjects you do not feel curious about, which you have to rote learn. Now, let's talk about the brain drain, or as I prefer to call it, the talent overflow, ladies and gentlemen. Even when they are going abroad, they do not lose their Indian identity. And why are MNCs coming here? Because of the amazing work Indians are going abroad and doing, ladies and gentlemen. A speaker here, I think from SSS, talked about the Indian mode of cognitiveness. This is basically an essentialist argument which differentiates between Indians and other humans. Ladies and gentlemen, do we have separate medicines for humans? And every proposition speaker here failed to understand the difference between schooling or college and education. Ladies and gentlemen, schooling or college is a temporary process which gives you a degree in your hand, but education is a lifelong, holistic process which also teaches you values, like the LMB speaker brought up, which starts at home and in the country. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Very strong points indeed, Ram. You see, I think countries in the very near future is going to be extremely apprehensive of Indian sort of tech immigrants, because at one time we were trying to become the CEOs. Now we are trying to become the prime ministers, So I think you better watch out because, well, very strong points made, and I think an important point that the new national education policy gives you opportunity to break off and do sabbaticals and stuff like that. But once again, we are left hanging on and answering that how well will it be implemented. Strong points made, Ram, and let's see who is there to take you on. So you will be taken on by Ridhima Kothari of Sushila Birla. Ridhima, please.
Yes. So you mentioned that we have a shared identity in the nation. So people who have actually graduated from the Indian education system are involved in practices of corruption. So are you implying that the shared identity that we have is of the corrupt people?
Ma'am, I honestly find your question really illogical. You come up here and talk about how our shared identity... You come up here and talk about how our shared identity is corrupt. Guess what? Our shared identity originated from the Indian freedom struggle. So you might as well question the legitimacy of the Indian freedom struggle. You can just come up and cherry pick facts here, but you cannot dispute the fact that the Indian education system is what has kept the nation united today.
That was a good effort, Ram. And when you distinguish between a country and a nation, I can think of one person who would have taken you on, for lengths on end, because there were debates between two very important Indians which never finished till the end of their lifetimes. And one of them was called Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, and the other was called Rabindranath Tagore, right? So, lucky for us, neither of them are here at this point of time. And the nation versus the country debate will wait till next year. Well done, young man. Well done. Thanks. Sunrit Kumar Chanda. Sunrit, the floor is yours.
Kindly let me adjust the mic because unfortunately I can't adjust the system. See, like this, we talk about the Indian education system only when we are joking. The Indian education system, that's right, that's two jokes in one. First joke, education. Second joke, system. Really? I'll ask you a question. Tell me, if a child helps a blind lady cross the road, where did he learn that from? I did it in class 7 because I had seen it on Doraemon. I never did it because I learned model science. If a student learns a concept of physics and can apply it while he's playing football, and then he gets a question on the same concept wrong in the exam because of a calculation error, does it mean he has no grasp of the concept? When I think about the UPSC, India's toughest exam, it comes to me, what are the qualities required for an IAS officer? Is it quick decision making and a good deal of common sense and courage? Or is it the ability to memorize fat books, to solve 10 question papers a day, and most importantly, pose a threat to the hard drives available in the market with his memory? This brings me to my next question. Perhaps it is not a mere coincidence that when I list down the essentials of an education system and the shortcomings of the Indian one, they'd be very, very similar. Ladies and gentlemen, covering our books with brown paper does not help us hide the flaws of the Indian education system. Oh, but just to be politically correct, now we have to cover them in orange. We have taken a very utilitarian approach to education. Just because we have a very large population does not mean we imply a system which makes a major chunk of the students feel they are totally useless. As Einstein properly said it, if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its entire life that it is believing it is stupid. Ladies and gentlemen, our system is promoting social Darwinism. Both the raw jungle and our system, they work on the same principle, survival of the fittest. We are promoting a culture where the most tenacious individuals make it through in the name of perseverance only because they can deal with extreme stress and a toxic environment. We have totally defeated the purpose of education because what we are creating are well-trained individuals and not well-educated ones. We have well-informed minds and not well-formed ones, which is why in the West we are only known as people who are very good at doing homework. This is only because everybody wants to go to the West now. Ah, the West. That's a really nice place. Back in colonial times, our land was used to cultivate indigo to boost Britain's economy. Today it's the same thing, but it's just foreign companies recruiting our talent. India's input generating someone else's output. Oh, but then, as the opposition said, in today's motion, since politicians run the nation, if the nation equates to politicians and service equates to civil servants, then I think the education system might be doing a great job to the Indian society. Also, let me end on a note which our moderator sir said, that yes, Lord Macaulay was the framer of our penal laws and also our education system. But then I'll end on a question. Does it really make a difference to a student whose mind has already been imprisoned by the shackles of rote learning? That's your to think. Thank you.
Sunrit has been both hard-hitting and unforgiving. Sunrit, there are a couple of earmarked debates in the history of debating, which has gone down across eras and centuries. One debate was about, I think it was just prior to the First World War, when the University of Oxford held a motion that was asking the people not to join the war for the God and country. That debate was actually won by the proposition. And the Oxford Union, somewhere in the middle of the 19th century, held a series of debates which actually questioned Darwinism, right? So today you take Darwin for granted, appearing in the syllabus, but Darwin had a tough time proving the point that you and I came from monkeys, because that was held very strongly against him. So Darwinism didn't really just happen in the history of evolution.
Yes, sir, I also believe in the same. The courage to believe that what you are saying is correct is what separates true education from bookish knowledge.
I agree squarely with the conviction you put your points forward. Extremely well said. And to take on the horsepower generated by Sunrit will be Khushi Kothari of Sri Shiksha Aten. Khushi?
Yes, sir. Thank you for your speech, sir. You have mentioned various flaws of the current Indian education system. So given the political, social, and cultural economy that we have, can you suggest a better model?
See, for a country like us, the main aim of our education should have been to bind the country together. But then, what do you expect of a board that prints its question paper in just 2 languages instead of the several that we have in India? And since you talked about cultural diversity and everything, someone from your school also mentioned the same point, that a system cannot be there without flaws. I think it's correct to have, it's not a problem to have flaws, but then it's definitely wrong when you take 75 years to realize those flaws and then you make a change in the NEP. That shows you took 75 years to rack your brains and come up with the one-liner that it's time for a change. Thank you.
Strong and very important points. Sunrit had a major disagreement with books being covered in orange. I'm not entirely sure whether he disagrees on school buildings being painted blue, right? Right. On that note, I wish the debate had gone on longer, but like all good things coming to an end, I think we are on to the last team. And the last team very often has their work cut out for them, and I'm sure Karen Dhaliwal from Mahadevi Birla will be equal to the task. Karen.
Starting in 1, 2, 3. Even as the last speaker for the proposition today, I find it extremely important to emphasize on 2 words: education system. The opposition today has widely mistaken what the motion means when they assume that the government and its policies are synonymous with the education system. Our education system comprises of school facilities, our teaching resources, our staff, and that is extremely well formed. Deciding whether the universal literacy of India and how far away we are from it, deciding whether educated unemployment is a crucial problem or not, is not in the ambit of today's debate, because simply we are here to discuss whether the education system is efficient or not, whether the government is efficient or not. The purpose of the education system is to educate those who are a part of it. Its purpose is to empower the students enough to choose their own fields and then educated enough to excel in those fields. The speaker from Lama Tinia was convinced today that the board exams won't matter soon. I agree with you, sir. Today, Indian students do not need to worry about scoring a 95% in different boards whose scoring patterns widely vary, simply because we have a standardized testing pattern now, which will be objective in its evaluation and therefore grant students admission into universities. The opposition says that we have wasted our talent pool, and I agree. Our people are working abroad in companies like Google and furthering their economic interests, and we need better employment opportunities, we need better infrastructure. But where that is a government's failure, that is also the education system's achievement. The mere fact that Indian expats comprise the world's largest overseas diaspora is proof that our students are qualified and competent enough to work for multinational companies. That is the mark that the Indian education system is leaving abroad. Indra Nui from Madras Christian College, KV Kamath from NIT Karnataka, Ajay Banga from Delhi University, Rajiv Sur from Manipal Institute of Technology, the list goes on. I saw this one tweet that said that this guy Indian guy on Twitter, on YouTube, explained a concept to me better in 16 minutes than my professor could in 2 hours. How progressive we would be if these were our teachers. Well, they are our teachers. So I challenge you, ladies and gentlemen, find me one subject that has not been thoroughly explained by some Indian on YouTube. Years ago, the epitome of a good education was a degree from abroad. And today, students abroad are worried that we will eat up their jobs. That was the education system serving its purpose. Whatever that the opposition says here today, whatever case they make, whatever facts they present, whoever do they quote, they are making the argument for me. Because the very fact that they are here standing, questioning a system that they are the part of, comprehending and analyzing it, is proof that our education system has in fact succeeded. I wish my opponents the best of luck for today, tomorrow, and beyond, but they must recognize that they too are a product of today's Indian education system, and their achievements are also those of the Indian education system. My friend from DPS was very concerned that our education system is making us whitewashed since we are here talking in English. So let me draw a comparison for you, sir. The American schools celebrate Black History Month like a formality. The celebration of an oppressed identity is like a card in the mail, simply performative. Their knowledge about the Black History Month is limited to Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, Malcolm X, whereas in India, the National Curriculum Framework of 2005 says, and I quote, "Local oral history forms an integral part of national and regional history, therefore calls for greater critical engagement and awareness." The NEP 2020 advocates for the medium of teaching to be in one's mother tongue. Therefore, that is how our education system is preparing us for the modern world without letting go of our roots. I will end my case here by reminding that we are the product of today's education system, and you and I are who make the education system what it is. Therefore, please remember that whether it succeeds or not is completely upon us. Thank you.
Karen, thank you. You spent a good amount of time and emphasis on the Indian education system producing this workforce, the intellectual workforce for the world. So it's generally said, whilst there is a part of the world who makes a lot of money by selling fossil fuel, India probably makes some money by selling living fuel, which is in the pre-fossilized state. But extremely well-made points, and Karen will be countered by, wait a minute, with the flash in my eyes, I couldn't, yes. Karen will be countered by Kavya Mahajan of DPS Ruby Park. Kavya?
Thank you, sir. And
Kavya, just come towards this side a bit. It's too dark to the left of the auditorium. Too dark out there. Yes, that's better.
Thank you so much for your speech. So you mentioned that the education system also includes teachers, right? But it is commonly known that in a lot of rural areas, teachers are overworked, they don't have enough resources. And on similar lines, when we're talking about teachers, you gave the example of an Indian person on Twitter talking about how a YouTube person helped explain a topic better than their teacher, right? So again, that brings up a lot of problems about how teachers are treated in our system and how capable our teachers are as well, right?
Yeah, so the YouTube example was from a man from United States of America. But yes, coming to your point, there are various strategies that are being implemented by the government, like Imprint scheme that claims to, that is a pan IIT and ISC scheme that is focusing towards solution-based research so that it can better the curriculum of our universities and schools so that the teachers are they are aware enough about what to teach their students. NCRT is holding regular meetings, they are holding regular workshops. The NEP was workshopped through and through with the teachers of our CBSE schools. There are initiatives like Global Initiative on Academic Networks, which is bringing in professionals from abroad to high schools in India to teach them about how they can better incorporate ideas of the world, therefore leading better to modernization and globalization. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. But honestly, incorporating this 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4 or whatever it is going to be a one stiff challenge because I think it gets started from 3 years of age or something like that. But yes, if we are to make something of ourselves, that challenge has to be faced up to. It remains to Ahuna Banerjee, to be the last speaker of this afternoon. Ahuna from Mahadevi Birla World Academy.
Am I audible? Please. All right. Please bear with me for 4 minutes. I know that I'm the last speaker and you want to move on to lunch already. Or else, thankful I'm at the non-neggable distance for now. 1.3 billion. 139 crores. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the number of people living in this country right at this moment. 139 dreams, 139 hopes. But how many of these ever come true? How many of these hopes and dreams are crushed and cast aside and absolutely shattered by this Indian education system? The proposition speakers came up and spoke about the right to education. I think it was a speaker from Sri Shikshayatan, and the speaker from BHS spoke about the midday meal. But I call these schemes myopic in nature. From class 1 to class 8, these children are given food as an incentive to attend school. That is a very good scheme. I absolutely agree. What about after this? What about after class 8 when these children again get trapped in a cycle of poverty? What happens when these children drop out and their literacy rate remains the same? Is this the education system that has served us well? Is this the education system that will make you and me and the crores outside achieve greatness? There are 10 lakh government schools in this country, ladies and gentlemen, and the education budget allotted is 3.1%. Now, 63 crores sounds like a big number, I know, but it is like giving one cookie to all of us present in this auditorium right now. It is nothing. Underpaid teachers, poor infrastructure, a multi-integrated syllabus, which is not really practical because even now universities and colleges do not accept admissions based on this. Try getting admission in a college when you don't have maths and chemistry but have physics. Or try getting into a medical college, pass NEET when you don't have biology. Our entire education system has to be integrated or else this will never become a reality. Understand that when the proposition speakers come up here and talk about how this very debate is a fact that the NEP has achieved or that there's holistic development, I find it very absurd, as should you. Because understand that we are very privileged people sitting over here debating this right now. As the speaker from Sri Shikshayatan pointed out, this is a very female-oriented debate, definitely, and I'm proud to be a part of it. But what about the medical school rates? What about the fact that there are reservations in IIT, JEE exams for women? What about the fact that 1 in 6 Muslim women are likely to drop out after middle school? The inequality ratio remains. And yes, let's talk about some trends, because the speaker from Loretta House mentioned about primary schools. 98% Indians attend primary schools. It is an amazing, amazing percentage. Guess how many people actually attend higher education? 26.3%, less than one-third. Understand that when LMB and DPS delegates come up here and talk about IITs, IIMs, IISCs, scientific excellence, they just further my case. Because except for those particular centers of excellence, how many universities are actually competitive at the global level? The next university, after all the IITs, to actually feature on QS World Rankings is University of Delhi at 521. Ladies and gentlemen, people have talked about mental health, quality education, RTE, NEP, NIRF, but let me ask you a simple question. What kind of an education system do you want? What is the true purpose of education to you? Is it an encumbrance or an embrace? Is it something that is rote memorization with zero application, or is it something that prepares you for the future and the world? Thank you.
Thank you, Ahona. Thank you. Very important points. And let's see what Harshita Bhalla from Birla Balika Vidyapith has got to say. Harshita, please come to the center aisle. Otherwise, we won't be able to see you.
Ma'am, you started with talking about dreams being crushed. That I don't think is based on the education system, because dreams being crushed, that is what parents do. And that is not about education system.
Okay, thank you for that question, ma'am. Okay, I think you misunderstood the way I actually put it forward. So when I say dreams being crushed, I mean, yes, there's a societal pressure, of course, but how many schools actively encourage their children to pursue an unconventional avenue as a career, say sports or music or theater? How many? How many schools actually even have extracurricular classes at the +2 level? I can count them with my fingers. So when it comes to dreams being crushed, yes, I think that the education system plays a huge part. And of course, society reflects the education system as well. The mindset of people, that's said by what they see over here. So I hope that answers your question. Thank you.
Thank you, Ahona. We finished the debate with a question being countered by another question. Thank you. If we just rewind and remember that we owe a minute to the first two speakers. So can I ask Srishti Lodha from Birla Balika Vidyapith, please allow them a minute and one buzzer at the end of it, 1 minute. Judges, please note that you may mark them for their 1 minute of rebuttals. This is supposed to be their round of rebuttals.
Well, there was a point put up by BHS. It's like UPSC has books to mug up. Come on now, India is a big country. We can't go around every time to understand what is the condition there. The books provide us a basic knowledge of what our country looks like, what mistakes we have done in past. And you need not mug up if you understand things. Another thing, it is like education till 8. Someone from Prop said that education, we get education till 8. Then what after that? When we got independence, this education till class 8 was still a far distant dream. This brings in the point, if there's no proper implementation, this dream wouldn't have been fulfilled. At least we have some amount of a population there to study till class 8. Now, we were arguing on languages. The NEP 2020 and the CUET combined has the 3-language formula. What is it for? Just to give importance to our own language. I'll end up by saying, yes, we accept we have miles to go. But we need to actually realize that we have covered a few miles. Thank you.
Points well made. Can we have Tamanna? Tamanna Sahai, Tamanna, your minute for rebuttal.
One of the points that have been made several times by the proposition over the course of this debate is that the reason this debate is possible is because of the Indian education system, and that we are all products of the Indian education system. Well, one thing that has also been pointed out by several speakers is that that we are a product of a certain type of Indian education system. We are in a privileged position, and we do not have the right to dictate that the Indian education system is good because we have it good. Just because we have it good doesn't mean the people in rural areas or people in the less privileged sections of society have the same access to the education that we do, the quality of education that we have. Earlier, I believe somebody, again from the opposition, brought up the statistic of only 26.3% enrollment. 1/3 of the people get into higher education. So if you can wax poetical about IITs and IIMs and IISCs all you want, but that doesn't mean that everybody gets into them. The 1/3 is... the 1/3 statistic is only for all the colleges. Most people don't even get into good colleges. Those include the worst colleges in the country as well.
Tamanna, thank you. Thank you. I must say this bell is a little bit compelling, you know. We'll borrow this bell for the next television debates, you know. Yes, it's a little bit compelling. This is a very good instrument if you wanted to drown the speaker's voice. Right? So, with this, ladies and gentlemen, judges, organizers, we come to the end of the formal round of debating. As the numbers are being added up, as the judges, or should I use the dreaded word called the jury, confers, there is a request, and we will request the judges to come up and give us their impression of the debating in general, maybe a little bit about the motion in particular. And a request is, please, let's keep to about 3 minutes, you know, to be fair to the speakers. They've had 3 minutes. So the judge, Before that, the first school will be summing up. They've already done it. They've already done it, right? She's always afraid that I've dozed off, you know. But no, I hadn't. The first school has summed. So judges, speak. Let us stick to 2.5, 3 minutes. It'll be very rewarding for all the students and the speakers to get your inputs into the debate. So could we request Oindrila, if you have finished giving your marks and tabulating, I think it'll be good to have them on the stage. Could one of the organizers escort the judges to the stage, please? Andrila, please come up, you know. Please come up on the stage.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's been an absolutely fascinating morning, and I want to make this quick. So I want to say one thing. The wonderful thing about the debate was very few people really looked at their papers. So congratulations. That was such a welcome change. You treated debating like it should be treated. Your conviction and the arguments and the conversation. I've just noted some points about the speakers, not necessarily in order, but Tamanna spoke about the need for developing opportunities to excel at personal skills. I just wanted to mention that that perhaps is something that we need to change and learn, both from parents and the teachers, learning by rote, a stress just on regular education as we know it. It's only in a place like the States that a carpenter, a graphic artist, a photographer, they're encouraged to excel, and they become world names. We need that. A lot of people talked about employment opportunities. That is one way of taking care of that, encouraging entrepreneurship. And I'll just mention a young lad who had a dream, and started a chain called Wow Momo at a very young age. I think that is a fantastic example. We need to encourage things like that. Okay, regional languages. People talked about it. I just want to leave a question with you. Having traveled in China twice over 25 days, almost nobody speaks English. It is such a problem even in Beijing. But they are world beaters. So the problem is not the vernacular. The problem is how we look at it, how our teachers, our parents, our families, and we look at it. I wanted to ask the people who were waxing eloquent about the vernacular, would you want to be educated in the vernacular? Do you think it could make you a world beater? Okay. Very important point that Noinika touched on, and it really touched a chord with me, was values. All of them generally spoke about education, regular education. But the value system, the education we get not just in school, but at home, about honor killings, the caste system, why is it wrong to differentiate? That is the crux on which our society will either progress or regress. That is so important, and I wanted to thank Noinika, and I think LMOB also mentioned that, values. It is so important, and in that context, I wanted to mention that change or progress, if we call it that, is not necessarily for the good. When I was in school in Loreto, we had no concept of who was what religion. It wasn't important. At assembly, we had readings from scriptures of almost every religion. And I'll end with just one last thing. You know, when we talk about there is a system of learning, yes, there is. We need to break away. We need to have progress. When the teacher tells you this is the accepted way to think, you are killing a certain point of creativity that can develop and fly into something fantastic. When I was in school, and I need to mention two teachers especially, who were known in Calcutta as fantastic teachers, Sarah Dasgupta and Nomita Dasgupta. I remember I was in class 8 or 9, and I really believed that Cassius was the hero of Julius Caesar. I remember Nomita telling me that if you really believe it and you think you can prove it and support it, go ahead. And I got the highest points in that selection because my teachers allowed me to think differently. I think that is what education should be about, being able to be different, but to have the skills to develop and hone in on that talent. So thank you, first of all, for this topic. And I think what is important to note, yes, IITs, IIMs, the medical colleges are all fantastic temples of excellence which are recognized in the world today. But there are some questions. Why is it that in America, which, as somebody pointed out, is so distressingly not au fait with world knowledge or basic general knowledge, why are they producing Nobel laureates by dozens? Why are we not? We have it in us. We need to look at the system. Thanks so much. It's been a real pleasure. Kunal, always, all of you, and my fellow judges. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you, Andrila. Thank you. You know, the same country that manufactures Nobel Prize like notes pouring out of an ATM overturns a 50-year-old legislation on birth control, you know. It happens in the same country, in the same society. Such are the vagaries of civilization. Thank you so much, Andrila. Could I request Mr. Ratan Poswala? Mr. Ratan, please come up on the...
Good afternoon, everyone. I feel quite inadequate standing here to speak after these 16 brilliant speakers we've heard today. So I know some will be rewarded for winning, others will not, but give all 16 of them a big round of applause for having the courage to come up here and speak so well. I'd also like to thank Birla High School for inviting me to be part of this fantastic event. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. Thankfully, there's a panel of judges, so no one's going to hate me for my decisions, but it's been really tough to choose between the different participants. When it comes to debating, I'm going to start with a very recent story. There was a debate on Saturday evening between the alumni of my school, St. Xavier's, and I guess our most hated enemies, La Martiniere for boys. No offense meant, guys. And the first speaker for La Martiniere was my fellow judge, Mr. Guptu, who tore into the first Xaverian speaker and said that the La Martiniere team has come there to teach us the art of debating. And of course, as a Xaverian, I immediately took some offense. But I think, jokes aside, what's really important, and you could see as the debate progressed that both sides were having a go at each other, and they obviously knew each other well from prior debates. What's really important about debating, and I think this is something that all of you students will face in the years ahead, you need to have the ability to debate and disagree without hating each other. And I think that's a skill that the world is losing by the day. So, learn from speakers such as Mr. Guptu, who could, and his opponents, who could tear each other to shreds during a debate, but then, as our chief guest said, go out and have a beer thereafter. Right? It's very important to be able to agree to disagree and have healthy debates. So please do take that forward. Also, being from an educational institution, much like many of those here, I think what ends up happening is that the good speakers get into this sort of pathway to continued opportunities to speak and excel and participate in debates and elocutions and MUNs as you now have. So I'm going to address this partially to them, but mostly to all of you in the audience. I think public speaking is a really essential skill in the future. So take the opportunity to speak, even if you might not be selected to come up here and speak. Take the opportunity to speak when you're with your friends, when you're discussing topics. Don't sit back and remain silent. State your point of view, state it respectfully, state it forcefully, but practice public speaking. It's an absolutely essential skill for the future. And try and get 1% better every day. Don't worry if you're not so good today. That doesn't mean you're a failure. There's a lovely speech by a lady called Carol Dweck on YouTube, where she talks about the opposite of success not being failure. The opposite of success is not yet. So all of you are not yet maybe good enough to be here, but you can be, and keep trying to get 1% better every day. I'm not enlightened enough to speak with any great depth on our education system, but I will end with something. As a former CA student, and I regretfully add as a former failed CA student, I don't have too many good things to say about that educational system, and I've had this debate over the years. We hold up the US and UK as model education systems, but I've often wondered, and some teams alluded to it, why does India produce so many outstanding students in spite of our education system? And why do the US and UK, and recent events will stand testimony to it, why do the US and UK produce such not very intelligent people in spite of their education system? So thanks everyone, it's been great being here. Look forward to seeing you again.
Ratan, thanks a lot. Actually, I wasn't here on Saturday, so when I got some WhatsApp updates as Pradeep was speaking, so my next line of query was, has he left the Xavier's campus in one piece or not? So I was eternally relieved on hearing that Pradeep is hale and hearty in one piece, because thankfully for him, lynching is still not in the Xaverian syllabus. So a great debate it was. Well done. We request Ma'am Ramanjit Kaur for her impression of this debate. Ma'am, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. And first of all, I like to start with an applause, and I want all of you to applaud for yourself for just being here. Many congratulations to Birla High School for always having such wonderful events and encouraging their students and making sure that they get quality whenever it comes to, school affairs. I must say that all the speakers here were amazing. And yes, we feel a little strange standing here trying to say the last word, but we may not have one. I would like to point out a few things over here. One of the speakers talked about purpose of education, and I want you all to think from the very nascent stage. What is the purpose of education? Are we looking at bread earners, good jobs, good lifestyle, and yet so unhappy within, still questioning life, why the midlife crisis, why there's so much dissatisfaction when I have the best car and the best house and the best social circle? Those are the questions that we want to ask. Why the greed is promoted, why the rat race is promoted right from the beginning. Aren't those the things that need to be looked into the moment we enter school? We are all unique. So how can we have the same education system? And I'm talking about a global education system. It's got nothing to do with India. It's a mindset that is there globally. Otherwise, Ukraine and Russia would not have happened. NEP has addressed a lot of these issues, and it's going to be a huge challenge for schools to implement those things. But we really seriously need to think of doing it for our school. Always start at home. I always used to promote that education needs to be different, or at least it should be completed and then we could be different. Till I was addressing students who wanted to drop out, who were not sure. They were brilliant students, but they were not sure what they wanted to do, because brilliant students meant only engineers, scientists, IS officers, or the last one was commerce. I want to ask all of you, even here, how many of us are engineers, doctors, or looking for that, or IS? Aren't we looking for something very, very different, and those million other jobs that we did not think of while we were in school? So what is it that needs to change? The uniqueness of it. Having each individual being treated as an individual. This human being is born with a raw material, and that raw material needs to be chiseled. His mind, his heart has to be explored, looked into through certain exercises, systems that need to be put in place. And that raw material needs to be chiseled. And it has to be made sure that that individual has to feel unique and very special. We are looking at debate today, but is that opportunity given to everyone? Are we practicing it in class? Are we being taught in class? Is there a period dedicated to communication skills, public speaking, music, dance, theater, creative writing? No, we don't have these periods. These are extracurricular, where these are the ones that form our life. These are the ones that give us life skills, team building, family structure, dealing with relationships, communication skills in public, personal, and social life. And if these are the things that make us a human being who's happy all the time, then these are the basic skills that need to be put into place in our daily curriculum as 50% life skills, arts, and other subjects that make us human, and 50% of all the basic knowledge that we need. That's what I'm here to say. And N Birla asked, why not Nobel laureates more here? I would say it's just marketing. And those are the entrepreneurial skills that we need to learn right from school age. Thank you so much.
Ramanjit, thank you. Pradeep, please give us a shareholding of your wisdom with your exploits for La Martiniere being still talked about. But there is a lot of people in the hall today. So Pradeep, my colleague, as one of the founding trustees of Calcutta Debating Circle. Pradeep.
First, may we have a round of applause for these 16 brilliant young minds on stage. I can tell you that we are insanely jealous. By we, I mean the judges. You were so good that we've decided that we'll take home the prizes. We won't give you anything at all. We'll give the chairman a cut. But the rest of it, we are taking it ourselves. The results are, I am told, quite in keeping, but it was really a challenging task for all the 4 judges because all of you were so good, and right till the end of the debate, you were still coming up with compelling arguments and compelling points. You were responding to questions that were well structured, and yet you were responding to them brilliantly. It's very difficult listening to so many speeches, especially the later speakers. What really encouraged me about the debate is that the speakers who came in after the break were so responsive. They had sat through the tension of undelivered speeches and listened to the previous 8 speakers, made points, responded to them, and then brought in their own points. I doff my hat to you, all the late speakers, the last 14, well done. In any debate, there's a strategy. You have to decide how you want to present your case. Then you have to make your assertion and forward the logic on the basis of which you are making your assertion, and then submit the evidence which will make your assertion compelling and very difficult to ignore for the opposition. All our young speakers did this, but I wish to mention 2 speakers whom I found particularly impressive. Unnika, your response, you're Unnika from Loreto, right? Your response to the rebuttal was so excellent. I don't think I've ever responded to a rebuttal like that. Okay. I don't want to get your name wrong. Honoronno. Yeah, I liked your humor. You really stuck a knife in and twisted it clockwise and anti-clockwise a couple of times. I like that style, because remember when somebody's you have a large audience who've come here to hear you debate. Please make it not just educative but also entertaining and memorable, because your humor and your satire and your drama and your play acting on stage will help you edge your way into the mind of not just your judges but also the audience. Now, it's usually our habit, I don't know what the chairman would agree to this or not, to have a show of hands as well. So there is a voice that is higher than the voice of the judges, and that is your voice. So think about what they've just told you and vote, if the chairman permits, a show of hands. Thank you.
Pradeep, thank you. I think...
the La Martiniere thing, it was a Saturday evening debate. How could you not have a few laughs? I mean, it's no point delivering a funeral oration when you have a Saturday evening debate. Yeah. So, no offense. He's from St. Xavier's, so he's really up.
Be careful when you cross the Park Street next time, We'll be waiting for you. Friends, we haven't, young man, rest for a while. We haven't finished yet. I'll call you to the stage. Not yet. He hasn't seen what metal chairpersons are made of. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a wonderful, wonderful afternoon. And we've thanked all the speakers, all the members of the House, everybody. But I think a standing ovation is due to the teachers, the back-end workers who've made this debate what it is, right? So please stand up and applaud the immaculate organization. Thank you all, everybody, each and every one of you who've been working, because, we've put together, please sit, we've put together programs of 1,000, 2,000 people coming to debates, and we know what kind of hard work it is. Immaculate, absolutely immaculate. And if this is the amount of effort, and if this is the amount of administrative details that goes into an event, and even if a fraction of it goes behind the national education policy, then I think much of our worries would be served. There is very little to add. We are not adding anything to any one of you who have said. This is extremely good beginning, and emerging from the pandemic and the rest of the ravages, you see, I would, with talent like yourselves, with the talent in the youngsters who are sat on the other side, I think the more schools also, encourage team debating, group debating, because that is where you can relax a lot more. Over here, you come, like a supersonic speed. Everybody wants to say the same thing. We would have done the same, exactly the same. So there is nothing wrong. You're in a great intellectual haste to go through everything that is there in the back of your minds. So it becomes a verbal T20 by other standards. But this is good, this is how inter-school events by compulsion has to be. But do find out sometime. The schools can do it. Different schools can get together. Different debating organizations can help you to do it, is to inculcate team debating where, the fun is a lot more. It doesn't befit somebody as senile as myself to give you a whole lot of do's and don'ts, because on an average, the audience, I think, has a 25% higher IQ than the judges and the chairperson added together, right? Because that part of biology has to be accepted. Well done. A couple of aspects could have been pointed out. You could have pointed out the link between economy and education, right? Because economy is something that fuels education, fuels social services. So think about it the next time a topic like that comes up. Educating India is like educating Europe. Has anybody ever thought of a unified education plan for the whole of Europe? I mean, God bless Ukraine. If you ever wanted to impose one unified education system for Europe, there will be many more world wars to come, but the 3, 4, 5 would be at your doorstep. So we are not doing entirely a very job of it. China has been mentioned a few times. Remember, they may appear to be speaking the same thing, but they are not. The Chinese domination is a total domination by the Han Chinese and the Han Mandarin. So all the local dialects in the rest of China has simply disappeared. So China, the monolithism of China has been very imposed, and all the regional variations has just been flushed out of the system. In some ways, we are happy that we haven't done the same over here. I think the points made were by and large absolutely brilliant. I'm just tempted to repeat a point that I made in one of the IIT debates a few years back, for which I almost got killed in Kharagpur. And that is, I said, with an IIT coming up in every traffic light, why does India go begging to France to buy jet engines which were manufactured 100 years back, Because Indian medicine doesn't go out to anywhere else to learn how to perform a brain operation or a heart operations or cancer treatment. But even today, with such a lot of emphasis on technical education, we are still passing the ball around the rest of the world as far as buying high-end technology is concerned. And I think that's your challenge, that is your challenge for generations ahead. And as that note, as Mr. Guptu has invited us, it is time for you, the House, to vote, right? So without being even a little bit afraid that what your friend, teacher may think of, vote with all your free mind and free will. So those of you who think that this motion, that for the past 75 years, the education system in India has served the country well, those of you who agree with the opposition, the speakers against the motion, can we have a little more light in the auditorium? Is that possible? I think that's high-end technology. That'll take some time, right? Anyway, so those of you who think that our friends who spoke against the motion have carried the House with them, have convinced you, put one hand up. Against the motion. Pradeep, you've been very good at this than I have been. Help me. Right, thank you. We perhaps have to go by a little bit of visual impression. Right. So, well, we have to make room for notas, you see, right? So those of you who now think you opine with the proposition that the country has indeed been well served by the education system, put one hand up. Right. So, ladies and gentlemen, even though India moves ahead with a lot of hope, we recognize that the work is cut out for ourselves. But as for this morning and this afternoon's debate, the opposition by and large has carried, the motion has fallen. Thank you very much. Thank you to all the organizers and the young men in the wings. The time is all yours now. Thank you.
May I now request Mrs. Loveleen Sehgal, Principal, Birla High School, to kindly deliver the vote of thanks.
Thank you so much, Arju. As the morning has turned to afternoon, after a scintillating exchange of words from our young millennials, I take this as my pleasure and privilege to propose a vote of thanks from the entire Birla High School fraternity. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and my very dear students. It has indeed been a great honor to have Mr. Manfred Auster with us as our chief guest today. Thank you so much, sir, for being with us. I thank him not only for gracing the occasion, but also for his valuable and encouraging words at the start of the program. My deepest gratitude and thanks goes out to our chairperson, Ms. Shri S.K. Birla. It's unfortunate that he is not well, so he was unable to make it today, for his generous sponsorship towards the prizes for the participants and the winners. My heartfelt thanks also goes out to all principals, teachers, and students of all the participating schools, 17 of them, without whom this debate would have never happened. Especially my thanks to Birla Balika Vidyapeeth from Pilani and La Martine, Lucknow, who have traversed many miles to be a part of this event. Let's have a round of applause for all participating schools. I'm immensely thankful to Mr. Raju Raman, our moderator for the prelims on the 9th, who's been a part of this debating journey for many years. Dr. Kunal Sharkar, the chairperson of the finals. I need to mention my deepest sense of appreciation for your eloquence, articulation, coupled with intellect and wit. I think he deserves a thunderous applause. Let me begin also by thanking our judges at the prelims, Mrs. Indu Gandhi, who graced the event even today, Mrs. Vibha Mitra, and Mr. Shamrat Chaudhary. I thank them. And I also thank the judges of this debate today, Mr. Pradeep Guptu, thank you for being here, Mrs. Oindrila Dutt, Mrs. Ramanjeet Kaur, a dear friend who never says no, Mr. Ratan Postwala, thank you for your presence with us. Our BHS alumni, our Birla High School alumni who have partnered with us and sponsored many gifts, the trophy for the best speaker, a Canon DSLR camera, and book coupons for all the finalists. An event of such magnitude needs the support of generous donors and sponsors. So I take this opportunity to acknowledge the contribution of Mr. Harshvardhan Neotia, Mrs. Meenu Budhia of Caring Minds. Keeping us hydrated was Diamond Beverages, Mr. Kuntal Patra from High Tech Systems, Link Pens. Please make sure you take a pen on your way out. There's a pen for the entire audience. Reliable Caterers, Pragya Enterprise, Nandini Agro Farms, scholars Surekha, Mr. Dev Chatterjee from Travel India, and Web Spiders. This debate would not have been possible without the support of our team at Birla High School, Mukundapur. Let's have a round of applause for our team, Mukundapur, who so generously helped us with the venue and other arrangements for our preliminary round on the 9th of July. A special mention must be made of the support we received from our management for being the catalyst that stimulated us to do our best and have always stood as pillars of our strength. How can I not thank my Birla High School team, my staff, both teaching, non-teaching, and from the IT department. I think we've just had a standing ovation for them, but I would like to clap for them for the endless work which has happened back end. Last but never the least, I wholeheartedly thank this wonderful audience for being a very good audience and sitting through these long speeches sometimes, but there's a lot of learning in that, let me tell you, my dear students. I think you've going back home enriched. So it's curtains down for the 23rd chapter of this debate. We will be back next year with more vigor, more enthusiasm to host the 24th N Birla Memorial Invitational Debate. And now we come to the moment we have all been waiting for. You have seen some backstage movement. You'll soon know why. For the announcement of the winners of this debate. Like the judges have said, it was a difficult decision, and I too agree with them. So you'll be happy with the results when you hear them. So ladies and gentlemen, and all finalists, with bated breath, let's now hear the names of the winners as I call upon Mrs. Sanjukta Mojumdar, our coordinator, to do the honors. Thank you once again.
Thank you, ma'am, and a very good afternoon to all of you. Well, now it's time for the denouement. After a few hours of scintillating and mind-boggling exchange of cognitive armories, we have arrived at our final destination, the prize distribution ceremony. The Q panel today scored over and above our expectations. We would like to express our appreciation to each and every member of the panel. As I call your names, please come up on stage to receive your certificate. And to do the honors, may I request Mrs. Ramanjit Kaur to kindly come up. Harshita Bhalla from Birla Balika Vidyapit. Kavya Mahajan from DPS Ruby Park. Can we hear it loud and clear for them, please? Sadia Hussain from Loreto House. Anuj Podar from La Martiniere for Boys. Thank you, ma'am. Khushi Kothari is for the next slot. May I thank you, ma'am. May I now call upon Mrs. N Birla Datta to please give away the next set of certificates to our panelists. Khushi Kothari from Sri Sikshayatan School. Ridhima Kothari from Sushila Birla Girls School. Kanv Dhandania from Birla High School. And Ananya Agarwal from Mahadevi Birla World Academy. Thank you, ma'am. All the finalists today will receive a participation certificate, a gift hamper from Nestle, Star Mark book coupons worth rupees 500 each, and a cash prize of rupees 1,000, sponsored by Shri S.K. Birla, Chairperson, Vidya Mandir Society. May I now request Mr. Pradeep Guptu to kindly join us on stage and give away the certificates and hampers to the following participants. From Birla Balika Vidyapeeth, Srishti Lodha and Tamanna Sahai. I would request all of you, once you get your things, just to make a half circle and be there for a group photograph. TPS Ruby Park, Scarlett Sen and Anaranya Sarkar. Loreto House, be ready. Umika Panda and Tista Ray. La Martiniere for boys, Orkon Basu and Anirudh Chaudhary. Please join them. Thank you, sir. May I now call upon Mr. Ratan Postwala to do the honors, please. Oindrila Deb and Fiona Raj from Sri Sikshaitan School, please step forward. Madhunisha Majumdar and Noyanika Ghosh from Sushila Birla Girls School. Ram Daftari and Sunrit Kumar Chanda from Birla High School. Karan Kaur Dhaliwal and Ahana Banerjee from Mahadevi Birla World Academy. Thank you, sir. It has been an exciting morning of forceful and compelling arguments. The judges indeed have a difficult time determining the jury award for the runner-up speaker, the best speaker, runner-up team, and the best team. May I request Chairperson Dr. Kunal Shawkar to give away the special jury award to the runner-up speaker? No! The Indian education system has always surprised us in the last 75 years, and it has lived up to its reputation today itself. We have 3 runner-up speakers. There was a tie, and the school management graciously decided to give it to all the 3 deserving participants. Tistare from Loreto House. The runner-up speaker receives a certificate and a check of rupees 2,500 sponsored by Shri S. K. Birla. Madhunisha Majumdar from Sushila Birla Girls School. And Ram Daftari from Birla High School. Thank you, sir. It's time now to announce the name of the runner-up team. And to do the honors, may I call upon Mrs. Farida Singh, Headmistress, Birla High School, and our chief guest, Consul General, Mr. Manfred Auster. Sir? The runner-up team receives a certificate each and a check of rupees 2,000 each. And the award goes to Loreto House. Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am. And now, ladies and gentlemen, hold your breath as I announce the name of the best team, the best of the lot, who have risen above the others to prove their mettle. I would like to request Major General V.N. Chaturvedi, Secretary General Vidya Mandir Society, Ms. Mukta Nayan, Director Birla High Schools, and Mrs. Loveleen Sehgal, Principal Birla High School, to please come up on stage to give away the prizes. Each member of the victorious team will receive the Birla High School certificate, the winner's trophy, a check of rupees 5,000 each, sponsored by Shri S. K. Birla, and an Apple iPad each. And the winning team, can you guess? It's Sushila Birla Girls School! Our dignitaries to kindly stay back for the climactic moment. And now it's time for the most coveted award of this prestigious event. The Best Speaker, the winner of 23rd N Birla Memorial Invitational Debate receives a certificate, a trophy sponsored by the Birla High School alumni. The Birla High School trophy, a check of ₹5,000 sponsored by Shri S.K. Birla, and a Canon DSLR camera sponsored by Birla High School alumni. Ladies and gentlemen, the winner. Before I announce to give away the alumni trophy and the DSLR camera, I would like to request Mr. Atul Churiwal, President Birla High School alumni, and Mrs. Loveleen Sehgal, and Mr. Gaurav Vasa to please come up on stage to do the honors. And the award goes to Nayonika Ghosh from SBGS. To give away the rest of the prizes, thank you, sir. To give away, Ma'am Major General V.N. Chaturvedi, Ma'am Nain, please. To give away the rest, please step back, ma'am. We have more prizes for Nayonika. That's the Birla High School trophy. And a check of ₹5,000. Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am. With that, we come to the end, to the epilogue of 23rd N Birla Memorial Invitational Debate. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being a part of the 23rd edition. It is just a matter of one revolution of the sun till we meet again to witness and celebrate the 24th N Birla Memorial Invitational Debate. Till then, adios. Keep debating, it makes life worthy. Thank you very much. Just want to inform all the participants, after we wrap up, after the national anthem, all of you will report backstage. You are now requested to please rise for the national anthem.
जनगण मन अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड उत्कल बंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्चल जलधि तरंगा तव शुभ नामे जागे तव शुभ आशीष मांगे गाहे तव जय गाथा जन गण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे